is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
And he'll be satisfied with this play. A beautiful twisting interception in the air by Brian Branch.
365 Sports is presented by IdealMRI.com. High-quality MRIs for $497 or less. IdealMRI.com. Your health is important, so is your budget.
2nd down and 9. Bootleg. McNamara on the move. Lets it go. It's a touchdown. Schoonmaker.
365 Sports is also brought to you by Texas Farm Bureau Insurance, protecting Texans since 1952.
On 2nd down, it's Daniels on the keeper, trying to break free. Daniels stayed in bounds and scored a Kansas touchdown.
Have you subscribed to our YouTube channel? Search 365 Sports on YouTube. Brought to you by TFNB, your bank for life.
Rattler with time. Underthrown and intercepted by the Wildcats. Julius Brents, the Iowa transfer.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
And here we go on this Tuesday afternoon, and it is 7-Eleven, which is one of the, famous convenience stores. I think if you're born on 7-Eleven, you should get free, what are they called? Slurpees.
Oh, yeah.
For the rest of your life. But there we are with that. 7-Eleven is the day. And the eve of Big 12 Media Days, we will be there in Arlington both tomorrow and also Thursday from start to finish, morning until our show goes off the air at 6 o'clock. And tomorrow we will have Dave Aranda, Baylor head football coach, a couple of Baylor players from throughout the Big 12, coaches from throughout the Big 12. I know we also will get Kalani Sitake, Brett Yormark, and many more names that will be a part of this unique Big 12. And then speaking of Dave Aranda, today, the news that he was going to speak at the Texas High School Coaches Association. Running backs coach A.J. Stewart will do that instead because Dave Aranda's father passed away, and he is mourning that. He'll be tomorrow in Dallas, in Arlington, and then the funeral coming up this weekend.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to hear. You know, you and I have both been through losing a father, and it's really hard to do. Anybody who has, and I really hate for Dave Aranda that he has to, go out and do this. I know that maybe that it had been going on for a while, but it's never easy. And credit to him for coming and upholding that at Big 12 Media Days. But man, he's going to have some hard times ahead. I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a rough deal, and I don't know that there ever would have been any good timing for it. I mean, you could say, oh, it's awful timing, you got to go do media days, but when would have been good? That's not something that's ever easy to deal with. So, yeah, I really just feel terrible for him and his family and all those that are affected by the passing. Good on him for, still showing up and being there, but I don't think anybody would have blamed him had he decided to do otherwise. But this is the big introduction, so it makes sense to be there and to then head off as soon as it's over with, since he doesn't have to be there for both days. So glad we'll get to talk to him. Just hate the circumstances, and hope he's able to kind of as best he can enjoy and maneuver through all of the noise and whatnot tomorrow. But I'm sure his mind's going to be elsewhere, and that's understandable.
Yeah, and the funeral, I have been told, is on Sunday, so that's also when he was going to be in Houston. So he'll be in Arlington tomorrow at Big 12 Media Days. Tomorrow, Wednesday's schedule. The schools that are involved include TCU, Houston, Kansas, Baylor, Oklahoma State, Texas, and Brigham Young. So players and coaches from those schools, Brett Yormark will speak tomorrow at 11 o'clock inside AT&T Stadium, where the Cowboys, of course, play their home stadium in Arlington. It has been there the last handful of years. They did one year at the Star in Frisco, and I thought it was fine. It was a little more cozy, but they've moved it to AT&T Stadium. They've been throughout the area in Dallas, and so that is the schedule tomorrow. And then, of course, there are storylines, and we'll get to that a little bit later on, and Paul kind of had that inside of a top five. But then there's the story that, well, It sure did change in 2 days. Pat Fitzgerald no longer the head coach. We mentioned that going off the air last night. The head coach at Northwestern was fired. He has then sent a letter to Northwestern discussing his representation and also backing up his history there in 17 years as a coach, and then also before that as a player. I think 1 year as an assistant coach. He is not going to go down without a fight. And I guess the biggest question that I have, what changed from the time the president said he would be suspended without pay for 2 weeks during the summer to 2 days later, he has been fired? What actual evidence is there for them to fire him compared to where it was a couple of days ago?
Well, I think that the student newspaper talked to more athletes than just were covered in that one instance. And it does bring to so when these things happen, and I can't say this enough, the people in charge, their defense is one of two things. Well, not defense, but it comes down to complicity or ignorance. And both of those things are fireable offenses depending on how severe the offense. And it appears the hazing thing, that his ignorance of it is bad enough to where they had to let him go. And I think that's where it came. And I think what changed also was it appears that Northwestern was trying to get this done a little quicker than maybe it needed to be. And then people start asking more questions, and more questions get answered, and then the firestorm starts. Now, I can't sit here and tell you whether Pat Fitzgerald deserved to be fired or not, but I do know that that's kind of how things work now, where they'd rather move on quickly than fight their way out of the hole. So,
yeah, it's pretty shocking. Just a few days ago, wouldn't have imagined this would have been the outcome. Obviously carved out a great career for himself at Northwestern and was well respected by many. Now, clearly there are other people, how many, I don't know, that felt differently about his image or who he was, or maybe some of the things that he allowed. It's a very confusing story because there's a lot of accusations being thrown from every direction. Every time there's a new article by Adam Rittenberg or somebody talking about the latest that the whistleblower had to say, there's some other former player refuting that or saying, well, hey, that's not exactly how it was. And so I don't know what's right or wrong in this. I mean, there sure seems to be an awful lot of evidence weighing on the side of, yeah, something wasn't right, and, there needed to be some type of change. But, to what extent, it's just hard to tell because there's a lot of accusations and a lot of just mystery still surrounding the entire situation. I know what's been alleged, but do I know that's how it happened as matter of factly, and everything went the way that it was purported to have? I don't know. I'm sure we'll learn more over time, and especially if Pat Fitzgerald decides that he wants to fight back on this, which it sounds like he does. So more to come. But yeah, I'm with Paul in that after a while, although Northwestern, I mean, they held out like a wet napkin. I mean, some schools dig their feet in and at least fight for a while. Northwestern, it was 2 days after the student newspaper, if even that, and they were like, all right, we give up. You're right. You busted us, and we're going to, I don't know. It was just very strange how quickly that all unfolded and turned direction. So there will be more on this, and I'm intrigued to know what all more there is. But, yeah, ugly allegations, and I don't know. I don't know what to think of it all.
Do these things ever end where a coach is not fired? So, I mean Huggins was going to he was fined, lost part of his salary, and, of course, eventually that was blown up with the DUI allegations or arrest. But how often do these things happen these days, and somehow the momentum of he's got to go, does the person or the coach weather the storm?
Not very often. I mean, really. I mean, you can't. I mean, because the institution's going to protect itself. And one guy, look, I've seen it.
But shouldn't the institution also at least, or do you think, and that's why it was a 2-week suspension? I'm not arguing with the firing or not because I don't have the details. But should the institution also fight for the employee who has allegations with one person? Maybe there's a handful of others. We don't know the information. Shouldn't they also fight for an employee who has been there as long as he has? This isn't Sherry Sandusky. This is not the allegations at Baylor. although there are allegations that perhaps the hazing was taken too far. But does that? Sometimes we just go, he's gone, and it's at least healthy to me to discuss what did the institution do to also honor's the wrong word, fight for their head coach who has had no history at all of anything going wrong.
Yeah, but a lot of coaches have no history at all of anything going wrong because nobody says anything about it. So that's the thing. It's like the other part is you're going to go to bat for the guy who's the highest paid employee of your university, who's in charge of seeing all this stuff. And the fact that it happened once when you're paying a guy how much you are, to me, if I'm the university, I'm like, look, we're paying you a lot of money to make sure that stuff like this doesn't happen.
Yeah, the old response, Craig, that, well, I didn't know anything about that. It used to work. Well, I didn't know anything about it, and that doesn't work anymore, does it? Because you're in control. It's your program, so your job is to also know what is going on.
I mean, I don't think it works when there's clearly a lot of stuff going on and you're pretending like you had no idea about it. When you pretend to have an investigation that cleared him of any wrongdoing and then the student freaking newspaper comes out in less than a few hours and says, oh, actually, there was plenty of wrongdoing, at least according to this source. So what an investigation you may have ran to completely miss out on all of these details. And again, I don't know what's true or not in this story. I mean, I kind of get what you're saying, but I mean, what's the university going to do? Tell the student newspaper they're full of it? I mean, what do you want Northwestern going to dig their heels in and be like, nope, the student newspaper's wrong and that guy's lying and we know. And I mean, I suppose they could do that, but I don't think they clearly have a very good, foundation to stand on because doesn't sound like their investigation was all that great to begin with. And maybe it was. I don't know. But, they came out with a statement and they possibly figured that was going to be good enough and would satisfy everybody's, wondering about it. And turns out that wasn't the case. And in fact, there was, a big chapter yet to come that went against the investigation itself as far as what was determined to actually be going on or what's alleged to have been going on. So, I mean, yeah, fight for your employee if you have a reason to fight for him, but I don't see the reason for Northwestern to fight here unless they've got something that they uncovered that flies directly in the face of the student newspaper. If they don't, then I don't know what they're fighting for other than just to say that they fought for the guy. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you don't believe everything at first glance or at first look, but you also don't fight just for the sake of fighting. So I'd have to know much more about what they actually know and what they uncovered in their investigation, what their position was, because it was a quick 180 from the way this story originally was going.
Hayden Maxwell apparently had a super chat on Friday and is asking us to answer the question. I was not here on Friday.
Answered it at the beginning of the show on Friday.
Okay.
Spent 25 or 6 minutes on it.
And Hayden, you know that thing that happened last Friday that David had a brain fart on? I don't know what could it have been. And if you guys answered it early on in the show, because I was not here on the air on Friday, the question, you want to open up the stream, finally answering the $17 million question I asked last Friday. Hayden, if you want to, send it again. Don't do a super chat. Send it again. Tag my name. And if we didn't answer it, we didn't discuss it, whatever you wanted, then we will. And hopefully you were listening on Friday or listening to the show on Friday.
Yeah, let me give a quick little pro tip. If you send something after about 5:40, we can't get to it before the end of the show, but we will answer it the next day, which is what we did at the beginning of the show on Friday, Hayden. We answered all of your questions all the way through, and I will try to find the link to that video. Emery can maybe get it to me of what we did.
All right, you can tag it again. And oh, by the way, Paxton, among many others, saying no, Pat Fitzgerald is done. You don't go around swinging blanks. You don't have the hazing. Your job is to know what is happening within your program. What I was saying, I think maybe both of you didn't understand what I was saying, is there was a time when I didn't know anything about it, worked among coaches.
Oh, look, you can't.
That's what I was saying. Now, that is not a defense in any way, shape, or form.
No, and it's not because, again, when I was paying a coach $65,000 a year and he was thrilled to get that in 1967, then yeah, maybe he can be like, I don't know anything about that. And even 1967 money, it's a great deal. But when I'm paying a coach 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, look, I don't care. I'm paying you 7 figures. There are multiple commas in your paycheck. If I'm paying you multiple commas, your job is to know everything you can possibly know. And to say that you didn't know is okay for maybe certain little things, but when big things are going on and when something that you do like this Shrek's list, which people knew about, if putting people on Shrek's list was getting to that point and you didn't know and you had a part in that, then that's a problem.
Yeah, I mean, how could he not know when he's directly involved in most of the allegations? I mean, as far as like the words written on the board and, the workouts themselves and, whatever else has been alleged at this point, I mean, he's pretty directly involved in all of those things. So, that flies in the face of the entire account. And, I'm glad you clarified there because I didn't really understand either. Like, I mean, you dig in your heels and you fight for what you believe in. But, I mean, I don't know what you're fighting for here unless your whole defense is that this person is lying about every single thing. And that leads to more sorting out and litigation probably and other things. But, I mean, I guess your intended original point, no, you can't just claim that you don't know anything. That's done ever since Bryles. That's over.
Yep.
That's the line that was crossed, and that can never, ever again be used as a legitimate reason to not understand or know about certain things going on in your program. Is a coach going to know every single thing? No. But this particular instance, when he's directly mentioned, and it's like the entire program and the culture and all of that, no, you can't just say, like, I didn't have any idea. It's impossible to position yourself that way if you're Pat Fitzgerald. So, in general, no, you can't not know about this or that. And, hey, maybe that puts more work on your plate, but you're getting paid, in most cases, millions of dollars in these high-profile positions. I know it's not that way across the board, but in general, post-Bryles, yeah, you can't say, well, I had another guy that was handling that, or that wasn't my responsibility, that was a recruiting coordinator. No, you're the head coach. All of it comes back to you no matter what. And if you didn't know, well, that's still your fault because you should have had the culture in place that the guys know that you didn't know is a problem. And so then you know about every single little thing. And that's just the way that it has to be.
If you're the captain of the ship and the ship sinks, whose responsibility is it?
Yeah.
And I've heard that before in military terms. By the way, Clint Moses, if he wasn't a coach, he'd likely be in jail right now. He's very lucky.
Yeah, if all this alleged is true and all that, yeah, I mean, I haven't read every single piece about it, but, I mean, I guess that's certainly possible. And, I know there's more out there than I've even, like I said, been able to come across just yet. I'll read more tonight once we settle in at the hotel or whatever. But, yeah, I mean, there's definitely some pretty egregious accusations out there, that's for sure. And I can understand people who take it at face value and think that, yeah, losing your job's not the worst thing that could happen. But, it's a very confusing story that still has to have some things worked through till we, I think, find out more of a clear idea of what exactly was going on.
MC Gusto, I'll read your chat. We live in a we live in a Me Too world where the accused have no chance of justice.
I don't know about that. It's hard. It's harder, but no chance of justice is not a fair thing because I think we've seen some people bounce back from that. But yeah, they have less of a chance because you have the internet, and it's not even justice. It's just where there's such a barrage of accusation that comes at you so fast. If it's a false one,
then
you still have to dig out of it.
Why did the president not fire him on Friday?
Well, I mean, look.
Because the president was probably trying to have him keep his job, clearly.
Well, I mean, so then the president was, if the president was trying to have, who is a legacy guy, and Fitzgerald keep his job, and then 2 days later he changes his mind, should the president have consequences?
Yes,
of course.
Absolutely.
What about the AD who just got back on campus today?
How many of these situations have we seen handled well?
Very few.
See, this is another one.
You know the one that I thought was handled pretty damn well? I got to get when Chris Beard and what happened with Chris Beard. That thing initially for about 24 to 48 hours flared up, and there was a lot of opinions. He was suspended, and then he was fired.
Yeah.
And it never got into – it was done.
You know what? Okay.
Got to give him credit.
And here's what
they handled it, and he was done.
Chris Del Conte, and is it Jay Harwell that's the president there? Hartzell. Jay Hartzell. This is what they did well. Look, while your incident may not have wound up being as big a deal as it looked like, you're the head coach of the basketball team at the University of Texas. It is your job not to let this stuff happen to you. So because it did happen, and because you did this, you have now violated the terms of the contract that we agreed to you. So you are out. That is what they did. They didn't sit there and hem and haw and get down in the details. The thing is that Chris Beard and his fiance had a domestic incident. That is not supposed to happen, and you're not supposed to bring that kind of attention on the coach. And when you get into the semantics argument of it, and there's a police report out there kind of disputing everything that you're saying, the university benefits in no way from keeping you there.
And the question earlier on the chat was how much information did the president have on Friday that changed, even though there were other reports that came out? He had the entire report as far as the investigation that Northwestern. And one of the other things that happens here, and Baylor went through this when there was no written report, remember that? Although there was at least some writings, is that they have the report, but they're not releasing the report. And I don't know if that's protecting not Pat Fitzgerald, but others. I don't know. You could redact a lot of things, but still have the report. I'm not sure how that was, how that came about.
Yeah, and I think this story has obviously changed quite a bit in 2 days. So to say, like, what about so-and-so and what about, like, I mean, give it some time. Like, let it play out. I mean, just 2 days ago he wasn't fired, and then all of a sudden he was. But, I mean, yeah, a 6-month investigation. You have all that evidence at your disposal, and you made the choice that you made, and then all of a sudden the student newspaper comes out with a story, and that erases the 6-month investigation that led you to believe you had made the right choice originally. There is some explanation that's needed there, without a doubt. I don't know how you read that report or whatever it was that entailed, and you aired on, no, everything's cool, culture's fine, coach is great, we'll stay, and then all of a sudden that 6-month investigation wasn't able to uncover what the student newspaper did in a far less than 6 months time period. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Yeah, what about the AD? What about the president? I mean, I don't think you just start firing people just left and right. I do think you let it play out and you discover a bit more about what the hell actually happened. And then maybe here in a week we hear that somebody else is out. But, you know, I think that it's a process, and you don't just like take the sword to everything and just cut it all loose right away. I think there's some things to sort through. Yeah.
In fact, some think that both the president and AD should go, and of course, that's going to be an opinion that some have.
Yeah.
That from Kyle, they have to clean the entire coaching staff, support staff, including equipment people and managers. If this did happen, everybody is complicit. Watch for Colorado to start contacting linemen. And that was one of the notes that Dennis Dodd brought up. Remember when Baylor went through their scandal in the summer of 16, immediately their 2020 or 2016 signing class was just pillaged. Not that it hadn't been almost immediately when all of it was about to break loose. And there was a question about, should the Northwestern players and recruits immediate special access to the portal? Because that has been brought up if there's a coaching change, transition, or something. And you hope that Northwestern keeps it all together. The question, who's going to be the one that does that?
Yeah, and I think where the university, again, where they made their biggest mistake is you have this investigation, you come out with a 2-week suspension, and so you hear 2-week suspension, and you hear, well, this might not be that bad if it's just 2 weeks, but it's one of those things where, like, hey, you need to make sure you pay attention to this hazing thing a little bit more. And then when the student newspaper in less than 24 hours can find things that, like, oh no, it was worse than that, then yeah, I mean, like, there's people going to be fired. Pat Fitzgerald's the highest paid employee, so he's going to be the first one to go. And then, the president and AD are going to have to figure out why they decided just on 2 weeks. And sometimes maybe, and I think this could have happened at Baylor, that you don't necessarily have to fire somebody if the punishment is stiff enough to where it's going to hurt you during the season. So Pat Fitzgerald getting suspended before, for the first couple weeks of practice or whatever, it does that. I mean, and just like if Baylor had suspended Art Briles for 7 games, then maybe that would have been like, okay, here's your lesson. I don't know.
Austin Green. In Austin, I think it's good to always look at different angles of this story. What about Matt Ariza in that situation? What about Duke lacrosse in that situation? So sometimes these things, with all the evidence that it seems to be and all the, gone, whatever, it doesn't always end that way.
Some of the Baylor story.
No, absolutely.
Sean Oakman.
Yeah.
Some BS, man.
Yeah.
Had people dragging his name through the mud, and I understand originally part of the reason as to why, but, he never fully recovered from that. I don't care what anybody says. He went and played some, leagues afterwards, but – his name got dragged through the mud only to be found innocent on the other side of it. And I remember I got a text message from some UT reporter asking me the night before of hey, have you heard anything about Sean Oakman? And I was like, no, I haven't heard anything about Sean Oakman. And next thing you know, here's a Texas reporter, because clearly their side had heard stuff. I guess the whole media over there had heard things. And, here's all of a sudden this police report that somebody had randomly dug up, and, good on them for finding that piece of it originally. But all that led to was that man having his name absolutely dragged through the mud, accused of everything under the sun. And after a long process, he was acquitted or
guilty.
Found not guilty. Yeah. And so, that does happen. And I do think that we are on the other side of, Me Too, to where there's more of an open mind and a recognition of either side. I do think that, there was a period there where if you were just even accused that, you were pretty much up S Creek, because that was just kind of the mood in the room at the time. I think that's bypassed a little bit and we're more evened out. But, it absolutely goes both ways, and sometimes it goes the way of somebody getting accused of something, fired, kicked off, drugged through the mud, whatever, and then you look up a couple months later and that person actually is not guilty of what they were alleged to have done. And so, you have to be mindful of that and not take everything at face value, and I think that's something that a lot of people have a hard time with for whatever reason. I don't know if it's just the culture's love of punishment or rush to justice or just wanting to believe that people are guilty when it's not us. I don't know what that all boils down to, but I do think we all could do a much better job of realizing that accusations aren't guilty, necessarily guilty determinations right out of the gates.
David Kreitzer, and then we break and come back with Louie Vaccher. He writes for the Wildcat Report.com, covers Northwestern. We've had him on this show before. No way in 2023 does a man risk $53 million left on his contract, knowingly letting BS like this happen. Well, we've seen women who make a bunch of money, who have incredible stability forever, and they've blown it because of certain things they've gotten involved in legally or otherwise.
The key term is there, knowingly. His excuse is that he didn't know. So he's risking $53 million by also not knowing. So it wasn't like again, you can be fired. Complicity and ignorance are different sides of the coin of the same sin. When bad things are going on and you're in charge and you were supposed to know them, being ignorant of it is only slightly worse. They're only slightly better than being involved.
You bruising your hands over there?
Yeah, a little bit.
That's
because
okay. That's okay. That's good. Let it go.
I say this a lot, and it's, look, it is the same thing, only slightly better. And if it's only slightly better, then you should still be fired for it.
I'm going to ask this question. I know I may get blistered for it, but that's okay. It's just asking the question. If they were 11-1 last year, would this have been as fast as we saw?
Yeah, I think so, because of the nature of it. It probably would have been even worse.
Someone brought up the name of David Shaw as a potential, and again, this is from the chat room, as David Shaw, who's former Stanford coach, no longer there, as a possibility as Northwestern tries to move forward. I saw a Brigham Young reporter earlier mention Mendenhall as someone that might be at least an option. Neither one of them might even be on the radar, but it's early on in this process. All right.
There'll be a lot of people.
It's a great university that's struggling right now in a couple of different sports. All right, now, when we come back, Louie Vaccher, WildcatReport.com, and this is 365 Sports. Stonewood Dental, I was there last week on Thursday. Dr. Steve Childress helped me a lot. One, I had that back next to the last molar, had it chipped, and he fixed it enough for me to handle it for a few weeks. And then I went back and I had a temporary crown put in, and I have the new crown that will come in sometime here in the next 8 to 12 days. Looking forward to it. And I mean, it wasn't like easy. Anytime somebody wants to stick a needle, inject something in your jaw, that hurts. But Something about him. I think he just lulls me to sleep, not to sleep, lulls me into security by talking sports with me, and the next thing you know, Dad, there it is. But it is such a process. He's so good at what he does. He's fantastic at what he does. He's a great dentist, and I'm glad that he's my dentist. For the longest time, I had too much neglect when it comes to my dental work. He has changed that. Now, my teeth are cleaner than ever before, healthier than ever before. And if you need a dentist and you're in the Central Texas area, Dr. Steve Childress and Stonewood Dental in Robinson, Texas. How about what's happening with Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat, Loop 340 and east of 84 in Waco. Make this the summer that you go big. Save big on Ram trucks during the Make This the Summer sales event at Alan Samuels in Waco. Choose a new 2023 Ram 1500 Lone Star Crew Cab and get 10% below MSRP or 2.9% financing for 72 months. How about the 2023 Ram 1500 Laramie Crew Cab, $5,000 off MSRP or better yet, 2.9% financing for 72 months. It's your choice only at Alan Samuels in Waco. Make this the summer of adventures during this Make This the Summer sales event and save big on the 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee Laredo with $3,500 and 2.9% financing for 72 months. That's right, $3,500 and 2.9% financing. Alan Samuels in Waco is your place to shop for your next vehicle. Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Alan Samuels, Loop 340 east of 84 in Waco.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Ben Erlinson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why he takes the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Ben Erlinson, 100 North 6th Street in Waco, 254-759-8533. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Riverbend Liquor and Wine, Lakeshore Drive, North 19th Street, right behind the bank, is a hidden gem in Waco. If you're a fan of bourbon, especially local Texas bourbons, that's where you gotta go. Balcones, TX, Devil's River, whatever it is, they've got it. Riverbend Liquor and Wine, plus the best selection of craft beers in Waco, seasonally churned out throughout the year. Whether it's spring, summer, fall, or winter, Riverbend Liquor and Wine, best selection of craft beers, a speedy drive-through window, and excellent customer service. Find out more on Instagram or just go by and see them. Lakeshore Drive at North 19th Street behind the bank.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon wrap fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
This is 365 Sports.
The 3 o'clock hour is sponsored by Waco Custom Marketplace. Meats, sweets, Texas treats, and a cut above the rest. 425 Lake Air Drive, Waco.
Because of the constant rapid changing and possibly new information or how things have changed with Northwestern, Louie Vaccher will join us at 4. He can't be available now. He's going to be on the Big Ten Network. Then he'll join us. So Louie Vaccher will join us a little bit later than we thought. And then also the possibility of Adam Rittenberg, who's been all over this story for ESPN.com, will join us at some point too. Now, there was one other story, and I have not checked with Pete Nakos and his Twitter timeline. So, Paul, if you want to do that, or Craig, or even Garrett. But this story I noticed from KXAN. It's not really their story. It is from the Austin Business Journal, not the Sports Business Journal, but the Austin Business Journal about UT and also the NIL. So I called Pete Nakos, and he was going to do a story about this afternoon. But the story was that Texas, according to Open Records Act and more, the first 2 years of NIL, the University of Texas athletes earned $15.6 million via NIL. The vast majority of that money paid to football and men's basketball players, a little over $13.5 million. That's not a surprise. And you may go, oh, my God, clutch your pearls. So I was asking Pete Nakos this. I don't know if that is fifth most, second most, 10th most. I know that's a lot of money, and there's some that maybe have not done 3 or 4 million, if anything at all. But when I saw that number, when I showed you guys that tweet, Craig and Paul, what was your initial reaction to just the number itself?
Unsurprised. I mean, based on offensive linemen alone, I mean, you would have thought that they'd have crossed.
No, that was $50,000 each for five or six offensive linemen. That's $300,000.
That's just at one position, right? So
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
85 scholarships, and you're talking about 2 years. So if you're spending $300,000 a position, not to mention basketball, which can get really high because now you're talking about just taking care of, of a roster of 12 scholarship players, probably 7 or 8 key guys with a lot of money to keep them from going to, play in Australia or something like that. So yeah, that did not surprise me. But in 2 years, and then again, if you're investing long-term in this, then that's fine. But if you spent $15 million in 2 years and within, say, 5 years, you're not winning conference titles and in playoff games, then I think you're going to have a market correction in that those people are going to say, what is this worth?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sort of interesting. I have a hard time with NIL and just discussing it in general. Not that it doesn't have some interesting things about it, or not that it's not, totally necessary. It's just when discussing like who's spending what and all that, we don't have anything to compare it to. We don't have really any solid figures. And so, hey, Texas spends over $13 million. Does that surprise me? No. Was I shocked by that number? Still no. And, I would just be interested in how that compares to others. But since we won't probably ever get that information, it's just like, okay, cool. They spend a lot of money, and I'm sure Georgia spends similar, and I'm sure Alabama spends similar, and I know that others aren't able to. And I think that's probably, about right when all is said and done.
I'm going to check in with the reporter I mentioned and see if there's any kind of update on that. But I'm sure there's probably 8 to 10 that are in that same neighborhood. We are joined by Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.com, who's going to give us some time when he doesn't have it. About 10 minutes here with Adam. You have been all over this story with Northwestern. In your opinion, Adam, what changed from Friday, the 2-week suspension, to yesterday with Coach Fitzgerald being fired?
Yeah, a couple of things, Smokey. There were more details that came out publicly, for starters, beginning with the report in the Daily Northwestern, and then obviously we reported some details, others did as well. And also the pressure ratcheted up significantly. And there were some news stories that came out, either people corroborating the whistleblower's claims or providing new information about things that they experienced while they played at Northwestern. And, there was a meeting of the Board of Trustees with the president on Sunday, I was told. I think there were people on either side of that, some that certainly supported Pat Fitzgerald and wanted him to continue, others who who agreed ultimately with the president to make the change. But it's certainly and then obviously the president in his statement on Monday night announced that part of the culture of that program is broken, and head coaches have to oversee the culture, and did not believe Pat Fitzgerald could proceed as the head coach at Northwestern.
So, I mean, based on the reporting of the student newspaper, you guys and others, why did the university put so little weight or punishment behind the report from the law firm? Was the report from the law firm just too narrow on one incident and not the whole issue of hazing in the program?
It's a great question. I can't answer it fully because I haven't seen the report. They've only provided an executive summary. It's been very limited as far as the details, and been told only a few people have actually seen that report in its entirety. But I can tell you this, in speaking with the whistleblower multiple times over the weekend, he shared everything. He shared the details that appeared in the Daily Northwestern, that appeared in ESPN. He was very thorough. He was prepared when we spoke, went through almost a Google Doc of things that he wanted to discuss, and told me that he did the same thing with the investigator and her team. So essentially, they should have had all the information at their disposal but prior to making the decision on Friday that Fitzgerald would only get that 2-week suspension in obviously a really light time of the calendar, and wouldn't be impacted at all really as the head coach going forward. There'd be some other measures put in place. So that was why this is such an odd situation. Is oftentimes these investigations lead directly to a firing. In this case, it didn't. It led to a suspension, a slap on the wrist, essentially. And then the reaction and the additional details and reporting, that's what ultimately led to the a new decision on Monday night to fire Fitz.
Fitzgerald has released a letter himself based on his attorney or a firm that he has hired. So is this about to get ugly?
Absolutely. It certainly could and will if Northwestern pursues for cause termination. It's very difficult to fire coaches for cause to begin with. I think it's even more difficult when your investigation that you commissioned determined that there wasn't enough evidence that Fitzgerald knew about this, and that you Northwestern and Fitzgerald, according to his statement that you mentioned, they agreed together that the 2-week suspension was enough. So what changed? What changed to lead to a firing? And then since you fired him, what would your for cause termination a claim be against him? Because I think it's going to be really tough for Northwestern to do that. And Fitzgerald's hired a very prominent attorney, a former U.S. attorney here in the Chicago area, to represent him. So certainly he's headed that direction, that Pat Fitzgerald and his alma mater will go at it to some degree in court.
Adam, isn't he didn't know about it, though, a pretty terrible defense as well, considering that he's the head coach and presumably the highest paid employee at Northwestern University, and someone who should know about these things and prevent them from going on within his program?
Right. I mean, I think that has become, as times have changed, a less justifiable defense. I didn't know anything. I wasn't there when it happened. Again, the investigation corroborated much of what this whistleblower said. So whatever you think of the whistleblower, and some have questioned his credibility, and I get it, his claims were corroborated to some degree. And so then it turns it back to Fitzgerald. Yes, you may not have known. We can't prove that you knew about this, but you've been the head coach for 17 years. You established the culture. These things, if true, did not just involve one or two players. They involved a lot of players. Hazing and doing some pretty horrible things to some of their teammates. How is this not known from a head coach's perspective? And that certainly played into the decision from Michael Schill on Monday night to ultimately fire Pat Fitzgerald.
Adam, you had a tweet like just moments ago about Northwestern is retaining the assistant coaches and support staff. After a meeting with, I guess, Derek Gregg, the AD, shouldn't that support staff and those coaches also known?
That's a fair point. And again, according to the investigation, while there wasn't evidence that they knew, there were opportunities to identify what was going on and report it. So a number of those coaches have been in the program. One assistant coach has been with Fitzgerald his entire tenure. He was a holdover from the previous coaching staff. And so, but as of now, none of them are being impacted as far as their employment for 2023. They're still going to remain on the staff. And, again, while I think it's fair to ask why, you also have to put together a season here. And if you were to get rid of half your staff 3 weeks before training camp and nobody in that program that's been around these players, that's an even tougher mountain to climb. It already is a steep one for Northwestern. It would get even worse if some of these other coaches weren't around, and certainly the strength staff, the training staff, and everybody else who's part of their program.
My last question, and thank you very much for time you didn't have. How has this and what has been the reaction overall? You have a legacy coach, the most successful one they've ever had. He played there. He's coached there for nearly 2 decades. How has this rocked the campus at Northwestern?
It absolutely has. And, there was a feeling yesterday after the news broke that, did Northwestern football just die? How do they come back from this? A longtime staff member, someone who's still around the program, told me today it's catastrophic. It's almost like we gave ourselves the death penalty. Now, again, that's emotional. It's in the moment. It's hyperbolic. There's, you guys know at Baylor, a lot of people were saying Baylor was done. Baylor wins the Big 12 championship not that long after. Penn State was done. We'll never hear from them again. They won the Big 10. This place is a little different because the history is so poor, other than Pat Fitzgerald's time as a player and a coach. Now, they hadn't been performing on the field. You certainly could have justified a firing, honestly, for just performance based off of the last 2 years and how this year is not exactly projected to be a great season. So I do think that there'll be a chance for Northwestern to rebound, but there's so many issues up in the air. I mean, I'm parked right next to the stadium, guys, right now. This is an antiquated stadium that needs to be renovated. They have a plan, $800 million to renovate this stadium. People are questioning whether it's going to happen now after the news on Monday night. That's a huge, huge thing for a program that absolutely needs a new stadium to boost attendance, to boost enthusiasm. Now there's questions about that. There's questions about everything.
Good luck the rest of what you're doing on this story, Adam. I know you got plenty of other things to do, and not sure if you were supposed to be at Big 12 Media Day starting tomorrow and Thursday or not, but continued luck as you cover this, and thanks for your time, and we appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, guys.
That's Adam Rittenberg, ESPN.com. And there you go. There's from somebody that has been speaking with the whistleblower quite many times. I just talked with Louie Vaccher. He will join us today at 4 o'clock. So it's good to have. We just flipped them around with Adam Rittenberg and then Louie Vaccher. Let's break right here. Come back with more of your response to what Adam had to say and ours too. And this is 365 Sports. DiscoverWoodway.com. They have had their events. They have a concert coming up, a live concert coming up that is free to the public. That is, of course, coming up on July the 19th. It's the acoustic night, an evening of stories and also songs, coming up from 6:30 until 8 o'clock, July the 19th. And when I started promoting this, it seemed like it was way too early. And here we are now, basically 8 days away. Acoustic night featuring Thomas Zobra, Gabe Lee, and also Caleb Cottle. They'll have stories, songs, and so much more. Carlene Bright Arboretum, by the way, is the host at the Whitehall Patio. Remember, they have renovated a lot of their facilities. Really, really nice. And they continue to work on their sports center, so to speak, as well throughout the last several months and even now. So it's July 19th, 6:30 to 8, the Carlene Bright Arboretum. Gates open at 6 o'clock. Music, stories, and more. Go to discoverwoodway.com for more information.
Cars price right, day and night. Average your car in Texas. Trucks built for you, red, white, and blue. Average your car in Texas. Cars that zoom with lots of room. Average your car in Texas. Count on us, a dealer to trust. Average your car in Waco, Texas.
is the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, that's TexasBeefHouse.com, and joined by Marketing Director Samantha Duvall. Samantha, thanks for your time. There have been numerous holidays, and now it's just straight up the summertime. Your thoughts about some of the specials and ideas you have?
So we still have our hamburger special going on. We're going to continue it through the end of July. When you bundle our 25-pound ground beef bundle, you can get hamburger for as low as $6 a pound. And the same with our 28-pound Wagyu hamburger patties. You can also get those for as low as $6 a pound. All of those come with free shipping in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Arkansas. We've got a lot of steaks online. People are buying up our brisket. Time to smoke a brisket. Good time to grill out. If you order and use our code SICK'EM10, you can get 10% off your order of $100 or more. And it's all grown right here in White House. We're a family-owned company. It's all pasture-raised. We just enjoy what we get to do.
Family reunion, people going out to the lakes, or people just meeting or going out of town. Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate at TexasBeefHouse.com.
In the market for a quality metal building? Since 1943, Pioneer Steel and Pipe has helped Central Texas residential and commercial customers with metal building design, panel options, building components, and trim options. Pioneer Steel and Pipe's residential line is energy efficient, offers low maintenance, reduces insurance payments, is impact resistant, and carries up to a 45-year limited warranty. In addition, they can also help you find a metal building contractor for your project. Pioneer Steel and Pipe with locations in Waco and Bryan and at pioneersboys.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive is premier, elite, life-changing experience where you can change your mind, body, and soul. Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness offers over 40 group exercise classes each week, including boot camp, indoor cycling, and more. If you haven't been there in quite some time, you're missing out on the improvements for our members. New flooring in the weight room and locker room, new paint and mirrors added in the weight room and group exercise room, with more new machines arriving over the next few months. New free weights, weight machines, TRX, rowing machines, stationary bikes, new treadmills, new elliptical machines on spacious weight room floor. Personal training with Christy London, Randall Corley, and Alex Botch, where you will be encouraged and motivated to grow. There's sauna, whirlpool, tanning bed, and kids club. The amenities are great. 16 tennis courts plus an 1,100-seat stadium court, 8 pickleball courts, youth and adult tennis and pickleball lessons. Visit our website, wacotennis.com, or visit Waco Regional Tennis and Fitness on Lakeshore Drive in Waco.
This is 365 Sports. Text us at 254-339-1122. The text line is sponsored by Riverbend Liquor and Wine, with the most extensive variety of craft beer in Waco. A hidden gem on Lakeshore Drive and 19th Street.
We'll get to a couple of super chats in just a second, but a couple of other comments from you in the chat room. David Smoak, Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. Tomorrow and Thursday, live from AT&T Stadium in Arlington. Big 12 Media Days from start to finish. Northwestern, being a private school, this is from Brock Miracle, with hard academic standards is going to kill them. On top of that, being a doormat for the new Big Ten and not adapting to the transfer portal. Yeah, there could be some back coming off 1-11. Sir, blah, blah, blah. Where did it go? From Kyle, money is why they don't cancel. Northwestern probably could care less about the players, but TV schedules and conference payouts would become a mess and start to involve other universities. In other words, if like Northwestern, they're not dropping their football program. Come on, they're not going to do that. Especially when they're not, and then when you're going to get the kind of money you get for being a part of the Big Ten. St. Dominic's Rosary, let me get this straight. You had a high-priced, well-known law firm conduct an in-depth investigation, and the results were that the coach had no knowledge of hazing. Northwestern caved to the media.
Well, I mean, again, take down this rosary. I'm going to say this for the 50th time today. If he's getting paid $7 million and doesn't have knowledge of almost everything that's going on in his program, then why is he getting paid $7 million? Like that, let's not excuse the responsibility of, and look, they said he didn't have knowledge of hazing, and then more evidence comes out that makes it look like he had a little bit of knowledge of it. So what they did was clearly incomplete, and there were things that have come out after that. Again, complicity or ignorance are almost as bad as each other.
Yeah, I think you can kind of take that question a couple of different ways. Certainly the part that you just said there, but I think it also begs the question of how do you do an entire investigation for 6 months and they don't come up with a fireable offense, but then 2 days later the student newspaper does. Mm-hmm. That's a question I would have. How many millions of dollars did they spend to investigate every little nook and cranny for 6 months? And they determined after 6 months and millions of dollars and professional investigators and lawyers and all that, no, we're good. We'll keep him on. We just have to, slight punishment here, have to do this or that. But we're moving forward.
Well,
then all of a sudden, like, student newspaper uncovers the massive smoking gun. Like, that's the part that, to me, I'd have a hard problem connecting the two and wondering how the hell that happened.
And by the way, Northwestern has produced many a journalist over the years, kind of like Missouri and a few other places. Syracuse.
Yeah, Northwestern's a very
Stephen F.
prestigious place. And I'll say this. I also don't know, because I also, having experienced this, like the three of us did very firsthand, I'm not sure sometimes these law firms are hired to really investigate it, or they're hired to find a way to make it go away, because that's what it looked like from what we had. This was a make it go away thing. Oh, we had a little hazing. We're going to suspend the coach for a couple days. So if their job was to fully investigate and give a full accounting of what happened, then I don't know if that's what happened, but if their job was to try and make it go away, then that's clearly what it looked like.
All right.
Because the law firm doesn't have to tell what they were hired to do, right?
Like Pepper Hamilton?
Yeah.
Look, Chris, $10 super chat. Thank you, guys. How much of the Northwestern and Penn State scandals fall on the Big Ten to punish and prevent these institutional failures of schools to police themselves? I see a huge lawsuit from old players. We remember the Baylor scandal. All of us do, and probably you do as well. And it was almost laughable that, first of all, not the scandal. That was not laughable. Everyone has their own opinion on it. Everyone has their opinion on the investigation and what Baylor did and did they crumble, etc. Everyone has their opinion. But one thing that was very unique is that the Big 12 basically then shut down their neck when they had all these fines and took money away. And I think that probably bothered more Baylor fans and alums than anything else that went on during that time. Not that to take away from those who might have been victims. But it was almost like, okay, we've got a wounded animal here. Let's make sure we all but kill them. And it was, I think, in my opinion, in that time, and Bob Bowlesby disagreed with me, but I think at that time it was like, let's just someone's injured, let's make it worse. When that money then took, 3 or 4 years for them to get some of that money back. And that was something that was the question more than anything else over the years. When are we going to get the money back? It finally did. But that seemed to be a little bit overkill from the Big 12 on Baylor. Anyone want to discuss that?
Well, yeah, like the actual question is why didn't the conference do anything and punish them? I don't really think that's much in their jurisdiction, and I don't think that you're trying to further harm the situation because you're directly involved in it. So you hurt them, you're hurting your brand in a roundabout way as well. I think, there may come a time where you want to wash your hands of it, but there's just a lot to sort through here. Like, it's 3 days ago he wasn't fired, now he is, and I think Northwestern's just trying to figure their positioning out, and they're obviously having a hard time dealing with all of the back and forth in the media and what all's going on there. We still don't have a completely clear picture. I think if you're the Big Ten, you're monitoring the situation, but I don't know anything you can do 3 days after the fact that's like, what are you going to, boot them from the conference. I mean, isn't that the same thing as guilty until proven it? You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know what's in their jurisdiction to be able to do exactly. Like, we've established that we know kind of similar stories because of the Baylor thing. Like, we've mentioned that now multiple times. Like, we have, experienced that, and you can argue that the Big 12 went out of their way to not be helpful in any sort of way, shape, or form. But, that was just a really hot button time, and I think everybody was just trying to figure out what the best practice was. And, for Bob Bowlesby, maybe he handles that differently if it was a different school, but you got to remember like how much the media was hammering home every single day, headlines after headline after headline, spending hours a day on it. And so it looked bad on the Big 12, and they took that as, well, how are we going to take that out on Baylor? By, taking away some money from them and punishing them as best they could. But, stop short of booting them out. And I don't know what their options would have been in that regard. So, I don't know. I understand the Big Ten if they want to kind of sit back and wait and see more of this, because it's not like the Baylor story dropped in the Big 12 2 days later was like, we're doing this. And, it took some time like to sort through. So I think that may be the case here as well with the Big Ten. And, how big of a stick they would want to swing towards one of their own universities, I don't know, but there is precedence for it. So we'll see on that front.
Let's break here. Louie Vaccher of the WildcatReport.com will join us. He was just a part of the Big Ten Network. He's been a part of covering this story. He covers Northwestern, and that is next on 365 Sports. Pioneer Still and Pipe. Brand new location just on the east side of 35 in Waco on what is Loop 340 and Highway 6. And after they opened the doors in 1943, last December, they opened up their brand new facility. Their showroom is 2,500 square feet. They have hundreds, thousands of new product, and even better because they do steel, they do pipe, they do metal. And so a lot of time, this is like heavy-duty stuff. If you wanted something, they had a certain length. And then you would have to go get it cut somewhere else, or you do it yourself. Now, because they have such a monstrous place now, and a great place, they have different lengths of tubing, metal, steel, pipe. So you can get it at the length you want, take it to where you're going to build something, real estate or commercial, and not have to worry about another stop along the way. The Pioneer Boys since 1943. Imagine staying in business, a locally owned, operated company, and they are thriving. PioneerBoys.com.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Don Humidor, your home with a 48-foot walk-in humidor with the elite cigar brands from around the world, including the #1 cigar of the year, Aging Room Cuatro Nicaragua. Plus, they have the great brands like Macanudo and Artur Fuente, Rocky Patel, Aston, and so much more. CBD, great for sore muscles, aches and pains, sleep, Vita Dreams, and anxiety, mild depression, general health and wellness. Their staff very knowledgeable on the subject. If anyone is curious about CBD, ask Carol and Ashley. Don Humidor in the Townwest Shopping Center off Valley Mills in Waco.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be part of the Waco community. We're a small family business here in Central Texas. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important. And unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. And that's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through this difficult time. So if you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. You can schedule online in minutes at idealmri.com or call 833-IDEAL-MRI.
Petty Clinic Men's Healthcare in Woodway is now proud to offer you men an exceptional weight management body sculpting product called semaglutide, also known as Ozempic or Wegovy. Semaglutide is an FDA-approved weight management medication. once-a-week injections of this powerful medication offers an average body fat weight loss of 20% within the first year of treatment. In addition to body sculpting, semaglutide also normalizes blood sugars and has the clinical research proof of reducing blood pressure, cholesterol, stroke, and heart attack risk. If you're like most men and you have stubborn fat that will just not respond to typical diets and exercise, then help is finally here. Semaglutide, affordable, highly effective. Google search Petty Clinic Waco and reach out to the Petty Clinic team today for a free consultation with Dr. Petty to see if semaglutide is right for you. Go to pettycliniclowt.com.
After my first car accident, I feared the biggest damage would be to my wallet. I expected a mountain of bills and a long, drawn-out process. But my Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent was there when I needed her and helped me get back on my feet and in my car in no time. Instead of a hassle, I got reassurance and a quick recovery.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 4 o'clock hour is sponsored by Boozer's Jewelers, the wedding ring store, specializing in custom jewelry and repair, all in-house.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
Louie Vaccher, WildcatReport.com, Northwestern. He has, of course, been covering the story. A minute ago was a part of the Big Ten Network as this Northwestern story has blown up in less than a week. And, Louie, thank you for your time with Paul, Craig, and I'm David Smoak. So when did it kind of like become part of your radar? Was this about the time when everybody else found out about it, or was this simmering somewhere in Chicago?
No, I mean, it was when everybody else found out about it. Really, the first inkling was on Friday when they announced it was a 2-week suspension, so we didn't think too much of it at the time. We knew this hazing investigation was going on in the background, but I had heard things that, it wasn't going to amount to much. And then when the 2-week vacation, right, the 2-week suspension in July when nothing's going on, it's even a recruiting dead period, it looked like it was nothing much. And then Saturday is when it really exploded, when the Daily Northwestern had that story with all these allegations from a former player and corroborated by another former player. And that's when the frenzy started, and it, the fire just slowly grew. And by Monday, that was the end of Pat Fitzgerald. It was surreal. It really was.
So, Lee, one of the questions we kind of just asked was this law firm hired to investigate this, or are they hired to make it go away? Because the suspension feels like a make it go away kind of a thing.
Well, I mean, we don't really know that because the report has not been released, right? They released an executive summary which said, that there were evidence that the hazing went on, but that Pat Fitzgerald, there wasn't evidence to suggest he knew about it. But then, it wasn't until the next day that Dr. Schill, the president, said, maybe it's what he should have known that he will get and could further the sanctions, and that's what eventually brought him down. But that report we sure like to see. Maggie Hickey, the person leading the investigation, she's the former investigator general for the state of Illinois. It's a high-powered law firm. They talked, I think it was 50 people within the program. It was a 6-month investigation, and you got to think if that law firm, they had to unearth at least what the Daily Northwestern did, right? I mean, so the president had that information and handed down a 2-week suspension. It wasn't until the story broke and went public that he came back and said, well, maybe I'll extend that a little bit, So it certainly does. It certainly looks like Northwestern tried to sweep it under the rug a little bit because they didn't think the details would come out.
Yeah, they were trying to protect him, right? Pat Fitzgerald, legacy, former player, successful coach despite last season. Were they trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, even if they maybe knew more?
Yeah, I mean, I think not only that, but it's, nobody wanted, look, Fitz is a beloved figure, probably the most popular athlete, maybe all time at Northwestern. When you take a look at what he did as a player and he's the all-time winningest coach, I mean, he's an icon. He is Northwestern football. And you've got a first-year school president and a second-year athletic director, that are making a decision on the most popular person that, he is the face of Northwestern for everyone, really. I mean, so there's a lot of political things involved here. It took a lot to decide to fire a guy like that. And, and then now the upshot of this is, Dr. Schill did that about face. First it was 2 weeks, and then 2 days later he's fired, and now Fitz is filing suit. He's hired a very high-profile Chicago attorney, and they're going to sue for wrongful termination. And I think Dr. Schill is going to have to explain why he thought it was 2 weeks and then thought it was worth firing 2 days later. So, it's going to get uglier, I think.
I mentioned Chicago. Obviously, Evanston is the home of Northwestern University, but Chicago right there at the hip. I had a question on the chat room. What have been the reactions? We've seen the letter from the current players that was apparently from all of them. What has been the reaction from former players? Are most of them angry about this, about Fitzgerald no longer the head coach?
Oh, yeah. They're angry. They're hurt. They're sad. I mean, this was, like I said, this is a beloved coach. His ex-players love that guy. And I think they feel that they feel like it was a player that had an axe to grind that made these allegations. And no one's denying that they happened. I think that there are a lot of differing viewpoints on how severe it was and whether it, warranted firing Pat Fitzgerald. I'll tell you, when I got the news, so I was on a walk with my wife, and I got the news. I got the call that he was fired. I happen to have a DM open on Twitter with a former player who graduated more than 10 years ago. And I sent him a tweet that, Pat Fitzgerald's fired. And he said, yeah, I found out about an hour ago. And he said, haven't stopped crying. That was his reaction. That's the way I think players feel betrayed. They're hurt, and they just can't believe that this happened.
So, and again, you don't know the details of the report, but you've got one report corroborated by a player that it got really bad with hazing. Is there a concern that they just don't want more of this stuff to come out, that it was a long time thing and this Shrek's list was a tradition that Pat Fitzgerald had?
Yeah, I mean, there's been several other players that have come out at various stages and confirmed things and said yes. I think there's a total of 11 players that yes, this occurred. And then we had a charge of racism from a former offensive lineman that was quite a while ago. So, once this, and that's what my biggest criticism of the administration here is, they didn't get out front of this and be transparent and come out with that report, redact the names, do what you have to do legally, but get it out there and show this is what we are working with, because what happens is the media creates that frenzy. And then every time a story comes out, and we publish some of them too, I talked to former managers at the school that said, yes, this running of players and the car wash things, yes, they happened, and everyone was aware of it, and they'd be surprised if it didn't, that kind of stuff. It was all coming out, but every time a story came out, a tweet went out, it just added gasoline to the fire, and this thing started going out of control, and you've got people making allegations over Fitz's entire 17-year period. They really needed to get out in front of it, control the narrative, and say, this is what we know, this is why we did what we did. And I think they really botched it, and they look really bad as a result.
Louie, I asked Adam Rittenberg this from ESPN. So it appears now that the entire staff, football, coaching staff, and the support staff will stay intact. And I understand they have a football season. Heck, we're about to be at Big 12 Media Days tomorrow, the next couple of days, then all the other conferences, and then practices start in August. If Fitzgerald's fired and he's the captain of the ship, I get that if that's the reason. What about the rest of the staff that was involved in perhaps knowing this or should have known this?
Yeah, I think that's a valid question. And this is, I think right now it's expediency that I don't know if they have a choice other than retaining everybody, because who are you going to bring in? If you fire everybody, you know, they do have 5 new coaches this year that just came on board in the last few months. So maybe other than that, if you fire everybody, can you bring that many new coaches in and get ready for a season in 2 months? So I think this was really, they were left with no choice. They had to do it, but it certainly looks bad. And if Fitzgerald gets fired for this, well, then what about these coaches? And, you know, they have this no tolerance hazing policy that coaches are mandatory reporters. No one reported anything, you know, so everyone is at least complicit in this. I just think it was, they were forced to keep them on because they really didn't feel like they had another choice.
So, Louie,
what
do you see as the next 2 years for this program in going through an interim coaching staff? How attractive will the job be to coaches? I mean, it is a Big Ten job, you know, in one of the Power 2 conferences. But it also, you know, comes with it, you know, a total rebuild job, the stresses of the academic pressures at Northwestern and more. How do you see this playing out over the next year or so?
Over the next 2 years, I don't know what the next 2 days are going to look like. I mean, this thing is spiraling. It seems like every hour on the hour yesterday, this new revelation was coming out. It was crazy. But, you know, you mentioned, I would think that they're trying to get an interim coach. I don't know if you hire a former coach, you know, the names like, you know, Paul Christ are coming out and things like that I've seen on lists. I don't think you can hire an employed coach right now that's going to come 2 months before the season. That's awfully hard to ask. So if they go interim, you know, right now they've named David Braun the defensive coordinator, who's been here since January, right? And he came from North Dakota State. This is his first Power 5 job. He's kind of they call him the liaison. He's not even the interim head coach. They don't have one right now. There's no one in the leadership role right now. But, you know, you look at Northwestern is always, like you mentioned, the academics. It's always going to be tough from that. Recruiting is always going to be tough at Northwestern. It was always a difficult job, but also the changes to college football landscape with NIL. You know, Northwestern was the last Big Ten school to establish a collective. They're a little bit behind the curve there. With transfers, that brings up academics again. Other than graduates, it's very difficult to get a transfer in through the academic side of things. And then you look at the Big Ten, adding USC and UCLA and the West divisions going away. It's going to be tougher and tougher for a school like Northwestern to ever get back to the Big Ten title game. And then on top of that, you got to replace an absolute icon that everybody loved at Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald, you know, the face of the program for decades. So yeah, it's not easy.
Louie, have you heard anything, because we've seen this before, when a school goes through something like this, the next thing you know, there's waves of it, of course, and I'm talking about the protocol. Do you know whether or not Northwestern will open up anyone that's a part of this team or anyone that's signed for the class of 23? Will they allow them to move on somewhere else if they want?
Well, yeah, you got to think so, right? That if there's a coaching change, and, you know, again, we get into the timing of it, right? Two months before the season, how many programs have open scholarships available? I mean, that's an awfully big risk for a kid to take. You know, Northwestern, a lot of these kids come there for the degree. And if you're 2 years in, 3 years in, or if you're obviously your fourth year, I got a feeling they're going to stay. If nothing else, than to get a degree rather than, you know, it's the known rather than the unknown. So, yeah, I assume that there's going to be some defections. I don't know how many. I would think that there's going to be some. And, you know, they just announced a little while ago that, as you mentioned, the staff is going to be retained. So, I don't know. It's a mess. Like, that's why you ask the next 2 years. I mean, I have no idea.
Yeah, you're worried that you're trying to see what happens in the next 2 hours, much less the next couple of days. Do you feel like, okay, Fitzgerald's going to sue Northwestern? We know that, right? He feels like he's being betrayed in the worst way, and maybe also reclaiming some of the money, the $53 million or whatever's left in his contract. But how about the players who feel like they were the ones abused? Do you feel like they might sue? And what is the legal part? Do they sue Northwestern? Can they sue Fitzgerald? What do they do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really don't know. I don't know what the legal liability. I would assume it'd be program. Maybe Fitzgerald too. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that yet.
Right.
Even the person that made the initial allegations, I haven't heard any threats of a lawsuit or anything like that. You know, the kid definitely had an axe to grind, but I don't think it went as far as lawsuits. I haven't heard about that. But yeah, Fitz will get his day in court, and I think, you know, President Schill is going to have to explain how the allegations which led to a 2-week suspension on Friday became termination on Monday when nothing new came, and they had an agreement. Apparently, Fitz referenced that in his statement that they came to a mutual agreement on 2 weeks on Friday, and then on Monday he got terminated. So it's, you know, Dr. Schill's he's got some explaining to do.
Yeah. Louie, thanks for your time. We appreciate it. I know it's been a busy time for you since Friday. Thanks for your time, and good luck moving forward and covering it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me.
Louie Vaccher from Wildcat Report. Thank you very much. At Wildcat Report on Twitter. A lot of great questions from ArtieCat0811. On its question, does Northwestern have an agreement of sorts to continue playing in that old stadium, which is really cool, but for the Big 12, it's really underseated, no luxury boxes. That was brought up by Adam Rittenberg, Artie. $800 million makeover. Projects, facilities, or whatever, and now not sure that might happen with, you know, you'll have donors, no matter what they feel, who will pull out the money. Baylor had one of the donors that helped build McLean Stadium basically stop funding anything football. He does some with men's basketball, but not in football because he's still so angry about how things went down in the mid-2000s through 2016 with Art Briles and company. And so, yeah, there's going to be some. I'm not going to support the program anymore. Maybe a lot more than others. And there's probably not going to be too many that's like, oh, by the way, I think you did it right. I'm going to give you $5 million.
No, I mean, you heard it. This is the most popular player, coach, or athlete in the history of Northwestern athletics. So, you know, no matter if it was the right decision or not, I mean, that doesn't matter to a lot of the people because he was so ridiculously popular there. So, you know, you know, whatever the truth of this is, and if the truth is even really bad, look, there's still, you know, people at Penn State that are mad about the Paterno statue coming down, you know, so that's never going to change.
Yeah, can't please everybody. You know, like Paul said, there's still people upset about the Paterno statue, rightfully, wrongfully. Still people upset about Briles. Name another coaching. You know, I'm sure there's still Oklahoma fans who are pissed Switzer got fired back in the day. You know, like that's just how it's going to be with any topic, really. You're never going to be unanimous on anything, and especially when you have something as tribalistic and, you know, crazy as college football fandom. There's going to be people that feel like Pat Fitzgerald would literally have had to murder somebody on ESPN to deserve being fired. So, you know, that's just part of the gig, and it's understandable to an extent. You can't read anything, you know, from this and not feel as though there's going to be some split opinions on there, and rightfully so, because there are a lot of questions that still remain, and, you know, who's culpable and all that type of stuff. You know, how much is he culpable compared to others? But, you know, it all goes back to he's the head coach. It's his program. Things were going wrong, and you don't have the excuse these days of being able to say, well, I didn't know about that, bottom line. And that's just the way that it is these days. And so, you know, they made the decision they made, but they definitely have had to clean up some mess as a result of the way they went about it, and they're not done by any stretch answering questions about this. As he said, I kind of don't want to compare every single thing to Baylor, but we didn't know what was going on every day. Like, we didn't – if somebody asked us what's happening in 2 weeks, hell if I know. Like, what's happening in 6 months, no clue whatsoever. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, there's no way that they have a good grasp just yet on how long this might drag out, how much more might be around the corner. Hopefully everything's had a flashlight shown on it, and there's no big major surprise or skeleton in the closet still to come, but – as far as how long this might take to unpack, we're just getting started, I think, with this story.
Yeah, and no matter what, whether you're a media member, somebody that covers a school, a program, somebody that is around, this is why there's scandals, because you don't know about it or something's going on that you don't know. And then all of a sudden something happens. And Baylor all started with the Sam Ukawatu trial when that came out sometime in mid or late July as far as the story. And that launched, that was in August of 2015. And I remember someone who had mentioned at least some details to me, not details like it was, but mentioned, and I remember calling a couple of 2 or 3 people at Baylor to check on it. And I remember we asked Phil Bennett, we asked Art Briles, how come what's the latest on Sam Ukawatu? And, well, he's going through something right now. In my opinion, and I've said this before, and this is not about Northwestern, but again, it can be about Northwestern or anywhere. In my opinion, how much pain would Baylor had been able to avoid scrutiny and the absolute blowtorch had somebody said Sam Ukawatu is not practicing because he's under investigation for sexual assault. They would have been sued out of their ass.
No.
But if someone would have just said that to anybody, and then that story comes out months earlier that he's under investigation for sexual assault, can you imagine the differences in how a lot of things would have happened?
Well, and just having talked to people over the years about how quickly we actually could have found this out if we had known what to ask or known what was kind of going on. They didn't even have to say that. All that they had to say was Sam is not with the program right now.
He's not practicing, and he will not play.
He is not with the program right now, and he will, and his status remains to be seen. And then you can unleash everybody can go find out on their own. But the way it was framed made it seem like, oh, well, he'll be back in a minute. So that was how it was. Now, Louie, I don't know if you guys heard or noticed what Louie Vaccher said there, in that Northwestern also painted themselves into a corner here a little bit. They have a university-wide no-tolerance policy on hazing, zero-tolerance policy on hazing. So he was mentioning that when it came to the assistant coaches staying on. So if you have a zero-tolerance policy on hazing, and hazing is going on inside your program, and you're the head coach, and then you get a 2-week suspension when you're not even doing anything, then that also opens you up to, well, I thought there was a zero-tolerance policy. And then they can say, well, we didn't tolerate it for 2 weeks in July when nobody's playing football. Well, I mean, that again, they painted themselves into this corner, and I doubt we'll ever see this report because it appears that it was done so that we wouldn't.
Yeah, you also wonder if the hazing policy was mainly towards fraternities and sororities.
Well, I mean, sure, I
get it. Anyone can haze, but you wonder if that was a part of it. But here we are with the football team.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to the Baylor comment 1 second, I mean, if somebody had said, well, hey, he's suspended, I mean, yeah, that would definitely have helped out, but it's not like that's just where it stopped. No. I mean, maybe nobody snoops around after that, but, that led to, oh, what's this about so-and-so, and what's this about this other incident, and what's this about, and that's how all that came to be anyway. So, yeah, maybe if they had just said, oh, yeah, he's suspended and didn't provide any details, that would have helped a great deal, but I don't know that means that, something else never happens again and that everybody stays as is for the last 10 years. I feel like they were kind of playing with walking around landmines anyways. It almost feels like, so inevitably they might have stepped on another one at some point, and maybe not. Maybe they'd be, 7-time Big 12 champions at this point. Bottom line is it was handled the way that it was, and it resulted in what it did, and now Northwestern's decided to handle it a certain type of way, and that clearly has blown up in their face. And, what the actual fallout outside of Pat Fitzgerald's job will be is – something we'll have to wait and see, because it takes longer than 3 days for all this to, come to a solution. So, yeah, more to come, and I just don't know what to expect that to be outside of some finger pointing and some people having to explain why, certain things were the way that they were.
All right, so we'll watch this story as it goes on, but wanted to give you a couple of different eyeballs with Adam Rittenberg, and also to Louie Vaccher for joining us. We appreciate that. It's 4:28. Craig's off the radar around the corner. I haven't been able to tease this. It was a couple of weeks ago when Craig brought up the question, I wonder what the television value of the Big 12 would be had everybody remained together when it opened in 1996. I know some of you reacted, man, that's a great question. And I told you I would ask Sam Bradshaw of Sitcom365.com to jump on that. And it took him a while to kind of get his arms around it. Well, he did. And we're going to have him on a little bit after 5 o'clock. So if that means A&M, Missouri, A&M, Missouri, Nebraska, and Colorado, where would the Big 12's value be compared to the Big 10 and SEC had all of them and Texas and Oklahoma remained together as one? Where would that compare? He's going to help us with that and answer some questions on that today a little bit after 5 o'clock. This, on the night of the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, this is 365 Sports.
Richard Carr, Buick GMC Cadillac, they are the people that you can count on. They're the people that I've counted on various occasions over the years to get my vehicle all situated, whether that be just some body work or whether that was after a wreck, which includes some body work, getting tire fixed up. They can hook you up, whether taking care of your vehicle like I needed to on a couple of occasions or getting into a brand new or pre-owned vehicle. Right now is their 24th anniversary sales event, and they have big savings on pre-owned cars and trucks, special savings on GMC Sierras and Buick Envision SUVs. And right now, dozens of Sierra trucks are on the lot. Qualified buyers can save $3,000 on 2023 GMC Sierra SLT SLE 1500s. Qualified buyers get special financing on the 2023 GMC Sierra trucks as well. If perhaps you're looking for some luxury when it comes to the SUVs, well, they've got luxury SUVs without a luxury price tag. Experience the smooth and quiet ride of the 23 Buick Encore, the Enclaves, and the Envisions, all from the Buick lineup. Right now, qualified buyers can get low financing, save $2,500 on Buick Enclave Premium, $3,500 on Buick Enclave Avenir, and they've also got a lot full of quality pre-owned cars and trucks in stock that are under $20,000, many of them. Affordable, thoroughly inspected, ready to finance for almost any credit rating. Quality vehicles ready to drive today at Richard Carr, both new and pre-owned. And as I mentioned at the top, if you're just looking to drive your car a little while longer, not even in the market for a vehicle, just want to keep the one that you're in tip-top shape, well, their award-winning service department is also standing by to keep you on the road and to give you peace of mind when driving your vehicle. Go to richardcarr.com to see their service specials or to set an appointment for quick and reliable service. For 24 years in Central Texas, they built a reputation as the people you can count on, run by proud Central Texans. Log on to richardcarr.com today. Call now or go see them now off Highway 6 at the Imperial exit.
It takes time to reach goals. It's a truth that applies to more than sports. It goes for your financial goals as well. You work hard for your money, and you deserve an investment strategy that lines up with your game plan. And Chuck Verno, your Edward Jones financial advisor, can help. If financial investments aren't putting forth the effort you desire, stop by today for a financial review. Chuck Verno, 720 North 64th Street in Waco, 254-732-1161. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. See all the things they can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
Do you or your kids get nervous about going to the dentist? Stonewood Dental, Dr. Steve Childress, he can help.
I've spent a career taking care of patients who as children had bad experiences, and now they're adults that hate going to the dentist. If I get a kid at 3 years old and they come every 6 months and it's a happy experience, it's normal for them. Now they have an accident at 6 or 7 or 8 at school. Now they have a broken tooth or a trauma. And they have to come here. They're used to lights, they're used to water in their mouth, they're used to experience, they already trust us. It's amazing what we can do with that kid without it being a negative thing. But if I see a 6 or 7 or 8 year old that's never been to the dentist, and now they have a trauma or an unfortunate unexpected toothache, it's harder to do that for that kid and it not be somewhat of a negative experience. So bottom line is I try to teach kids and adults and teenagers and everybody the way I'd want my family treated, which is where it's a necessary part of life. You just take care of it. It doesn't have to be that big a deal.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby is a homegrown, locally owned pizza place that's out of this world. Everything from the dough, the sauce, the sausage topping is made fresh in-house. Not to mention the amazing pizza pillows, the chicken wings are to die for. Try the Sikkim sauce, chili cheese fries or tots, plus great specials on food and drink every single day. Shorty's is also the perfect spot to watch the game with your friends. Shorty's Pizza Shack at 12th and Bagby. Tell them Paul sent you by.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com. Enjoying the show? Hit the like button and subscribe.
Earlier today, I mentioned the story of the Austin Business Journal, KXAN TV, also including that story in their report. That's how I found it. It was on my timeline about UT and the $15+ million in NIL money. And then I had the conversation with Pete Nakos as a story on his Twitter feed. But he had mentioned to me, here's just a few things he said to me. I said, who else would be in this neighborhood? And it didn't surprise me, the number, although it probably did initially. He said A&M, it's being reported that they spent $8 to $9 million in 2022 alone. Ohio State, obviously. Alabama, the Bryce Young. How much was Bryce Young getting? Remember, Saban admitted he was getting 7 figures at, I think it's may have been media days. But 7 figures is still, if it's $1 million, it's 1/15. USC with Caleb Williams. Pete Nakos, by the way, telling me that Jordan Addison didn't get a lot of money, even though he transferred from Pittsburgh to USC. Kentucky men's basketball. Remember, this is men's basketball, all sports. And then Florida, Georgia. And then he said, wait a minute, this is at the end of the conversation. I wouldn't be surprised if LSU blows that number out of the sky with football and also with what they have Olivia Dunn and the women's basketball players that have gotten to be rock stars along the way.
Yeah, but LSU's not paying that though, right? In that from just their collectives or whatever, so it's not like LSU's paying that.
Well, no, this is NIL, no matter how it comes together.
Yeah, I just mean like LSU's spending $10 million. Well, no, they aren't. Their donors are, but yeah, I mean they're very much in the NIL mix. Sounds like a bunch of schools from the same exact place that's making the most money that we hear about all the time. Also spending the most money to get the most talent, and that just kind of goes in a cycle that is probably never going to be broken, really, except for the random Ohio State or Michigan jumping into that mix and being in there, and, probably some ACC schools. But, beyond this year, I wonder how many Big 12, Pac-12, and, outside of the whatever that little nickname was for the ACC schools that were threatening to leave a couple months ago, outside of them, the rest of college football, what's the average? There's definitely a drop-off, and, that's only going to continue as we move forward. So, Interesting to hear. It's crazy, though. I could go and say, how much money does the Toronto Raptors spend on their team? And you know what? I could Google that and find that. How much do the Dallas Cowboys spend on their team? I can go Google that and find that. How much does LSU spend on NIL? We don't really like to say exactly because, it's not really, it's the secretive nature of this is so stupid. It really is. And I get that, it's not professional sports, so there's no need to divulge every detail, but it just makes it feel, as not as sleazy because it's all very much above board, but it makes it feel sort of secretive for no real reason at this point. I don't know what anybody's trying to hide. I think it would be just cooler to say, instead of on 3 coming up with whatever numbers they're coming up with, which they admit, there's a formula for, but no one really knows what that is. And it's been, a cool tool to see, although sometimes I see it and I'm like, there's no way in hell that's true. There's no way. So just a little bit more of a peek behind the curtain onto what's what, rather than what we're just fed, I feel like would be nice from a fan standpoint.
Well, again, I think it's one of those things where this was so taboo for so long. No one, but there's this large segment of the population in college athletics that doesn't want to talk about it like it's legal all of a sudden. Kind of like weed. Like if you live in Arizona and you were against marijuana legalization, or you just had it in your head that marijuana was illegal and now it's legal, you might be like, Fred smokes weed. And you're like, well, you don't have to whisper anymore. Right. There's a dispensary right over there he just walked out of.
Yeah.
I mean, the cops saw him do it and nobody stopped him, so you don't have to worry about it anymore. The stigma's gone. So we're still in the early phase of it where everybody still thinks this is illegal. And look, not all the NIL stuff is going to be above board because
that's part of the reason why it's still being kept quiet.
Yeah.
To me, alums would want to be proud to be able to have that number out there. I bet that UT fans were like, hell yeah, we're doing that.
Again, and Craig and I think, talked about this when you were gone, Smokey, when Nick Saban said what he said about Jimbo Fisher, if Jimbo had just gone, well, I mean, it's legal now. What do you want me to do?
Yeah, what do you think about?
You want me to not do it? Yeah, sure. Okay. I'll ride your moral high horse. I'm trying to win national championships here. I'm under some pressure.
Or get to a bowl game?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to catch them. So
right.
it's just,
it's
a weird thing.
One thing you said, though, in the text when I included that, when I shared that with you guys, the numbers, is one of the things you mentioned that there would be at some point or another a reset of this. What did you mean by that?
Well, I do think that there's a market correction coming, at least in certain places, where if I'm paying and paying and paying and nothing happens, then I'm not going to pay into that anymore, or I'm not going to pay in as much. So I think that I think it's going to be a constantly fluctuating market because, and it's the early parts of it right now. Texas is only in year 3 under Steve Sarkisian, so it's not like, you should be expecting him to win national championships in year 1 or 2, but by year 3, you want to see some progress. Now they're going to the SEC. You want to see them start making the playoff regularly. But if I'm paying for a coach that doesn't regularly get in what will now be the 12-team playoff, and players and all that, then eventually I'm going to stop doing it, and there's going to be a market correction to it. And you could get out ahead of the market correction by maybe being more forthright with all this stuff so that people see what's going on. But yeah, I think eventually there's going to be a market correction.
I disagree. I think that people are going to spend money to see their team win regardless. I think that maybe on occasion there's somebody who was donating, let's say, $2 million to UCF, and they're like, you know what, it's just never going to happen. Fine, I'm throwing in my chips, and it's pointless. I think there may be people like that, but I don't for one second believe that Ohio State fans are suddenly going to be like, you know what? We've been spending too much money on this product, and we're not winning national titles. If anything, the new coach comes in and demands more money. Like, it's only going to grow because the next guy comes in and is like, well, I know y'all were doing what y'all were doing before, but in order to get this thing back on track, we got to really invest in the program and, like, that song and dance. And, you don't retract in college sports. You just add and add and add and add, and some of them are forced to retract or to stop at a certain point. And for those folks, Paul, you're probably right, but under no circumstance whatsoever do I see any of the quote-unquote blue blood schools overcorrecting or correcting their positions. I think they only solidify them because they're all going to be making more money. Yep. And where's that going to go? You're going to have a rainbow waterfall instead of the crimson one? I mean, like, what all do you need to still do with all the extra money that's going to become pouring in? That's all going to athletes.
Right. How often do school fan bases of the larger, again, schools that are so committed to winning, how often do they stop spending money on facilities?
When they want a coach fired, and then he gets fired, and the new guy comes in, and they say, here you go.
Here we go.
Back at the table.
All right. We do have Off the Radar with Craig around the corner. Then, of course, Sam Bradshaw, unique. I have no idea about the answers to the question about what would the original Big 12 value be today. And then, how others who have come in, do they is it a trade-off to who left in some cases? We'll discuss that with him a little after 5 o'clock. Then Bill Connolly of ESPN on 5 storylines that he's looking forward to seeing over the next couple of days at Big 12 Media Days in Arlington, and we will be there both of those days, and this is 365 Sports. I thought it... Yeah.
With so many companies and policies out there, it gets so confusing shopping for insurance, and I never know if I'm getting the policy that's right for me. Luckily, I met the team at the Niche Group Insurance Agency. With the Niche Group, you can go to one company and get access to coverage options from many insurance carriers, and you get to speak to a real person about your specific coverage needs. With the Niche Group, I know I'm getting the right coverage at the right price. If you need insurance, talk to the experts at the Niche Group at 1-800-258-8302.
Automatic Chef Canteen is a full-service micro-market vending and office coffee provider with state-of-the-art vending equipment, a wide variety of products, and offering custom-fitted micro-market vending office coffee solutions for your employee break room. You want a full break room solution and a workplace oasis? Well, Automatic Chef Canteen, locally owned and operated for over 50 years in Central Texas, also includes in-house mechanics on call 24/7 for fast, reliable service and maintenance. Automatic Chef Canteen, 6900 Imperial Drive in Waco, or online at automaticchefcanteen.com.
TFNB Your Bank for Life is the official local bank of Baylor Athletics. Find out why more Central Texas are making TFNB their bank for life. Sign up for our Edge checking and savings accounts to earn interest or cash back. With 5 convenient locations and an award-winning mobile app, banking has never been easier. TFNB Your Bank for Life. Member FDIC.
Three Nations Brewing Company has 16 different beers on draft with a new beer every Friday. It also offers 2 air-conditioned tap rooms, a large indoor beer hall, a second-floor mezzanine offering a great overview of the brewing company and equipment and patio where you can relax under the shade. Plus, you can now experience the new Three Nations Beer Garden Grill on our shaded patio. Grab a cold beer and enjoy a bite from our freshly prepared and delicious menu. Street tacos, quesadillas, freshly cooked burgers and dogs, and veggie burgers too. Nachos and so much more, all prepared and cooked on site. So come visit the award-winning Three Nations Brewing Company on East Vandergrift off I-35 in Carrollton. Boozers is the wedding ring store and more. If you're ready to get engaged or already married and want to upgrade your wife's ring for a special anniversary, Boozers is the place to go. With the largest selection of premier quality diamond engagement rings and wedding rings in Central Texas. They have 7 cases with over 300 styles of rings from top designers like Natalie Kay. Choose from yellow, white, or rose gold, plus beautiful top quality loose diamonds. With an in-house jewelry, they can also custom make anything you want. Bring in a picture or drawing and let Boozers create your one-of-a-kind pendant or ring. They can even use some of your old gold and diamond jewelry to create something new. At Boozers, you'll find a great selection of quality timepieces, and Boozers is the place for expert watch maintenance and repairs too. They specialize in expert Rolex watch repair for fine jewelry, watches, custom work, and more. Go to Boozers on Valley Mills and Lake Air Drive in Waco.
Boozers, the wedding ring store and more.
This is Craig Smoak's Off the Radar, presented by Alliance Bank. They take pride in making banking easy. AllianceBankTexas.com.
All right, welcome into Off the Radar here on 365 Sports segment on Tuesdays and Thursdays at around 4:45. Taking a look at just a grab bag of stories from around the sports world. Just depends on the time and the news cycle on what we touch on, but we are in the slower time of year here in the month of July. And that means that there's a little bit less to talk about, but we still got enough to fill out a little segment today with some baseball, some MMA, and maybe a couple of other things as well. But let's start off with baseball, as tonight it'll be the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, 93rd edition of the All-Star Game. And the American League looking to win their 10th straight All-Star Game over the National League. The 2020 season, the only interruption there as they did not play the All-Star Game. It was canceled due to COVID. But the American League does have a 9-game win streak in this series. 93rd All-Star Game, 7 p.m. over on Fox. It'll be the Yankees' Garrett Cole versus Zach Gallen of the Diamondbacks as far as the pitching matchup goes. And last night, of course, as is the deal with having All-Star weeks or weekends, the NBA's is obviously very popular, and they have their skills challenges and all those types of things. But like the skills challenge in these All-Star games is the Home Run Derby. And last night we got to see a bunch of really talented dudes go up and hit home runs at a pretty high clip. And when all was said and done, it was Vladimir Guerrero Jr., the 2023 Home Run Derby winner. Joins his father, Vladimir Guerrero, as the only father and son duo to win Home Run Derby titles. So a pretty cool little, side to what he did with just winning the event in general. Also gets to share that with his dad. And he had 25 homers in the finals to go ahead and move on. But on his way he had to beat some pretty good players, and that included the likes of Julio Rodriguez, for example, in the semifinals, and eventually got around to the finals, and it was Randy Arozarena versus Guerrero. Guerrero with 25 home runs in the final frame, good enough to win the crown. And I've seen a lot of complaining. This seems to come up every time there's a home run derby or a slam dunk contest or whatever little event. It's always like critique on Twitter of like how this could be better. There's complaining about how rushed it was, and there's a lot to keep track of. And I don't know. I saw some complaints here and there on there, but did you get the chance to check it out? And if so, what did you think?
As you know, it's one of my favorite sporting events of the entire year.
Stop.
I know I do. I thoroughly enjoy it. It's just ridiculous. Probably just because of my group of friends, we have a blast with it. But yeah, I enjoy it. I mean, look, I say favorite of the year. It's in the top 20, but it's I love watching it. I've watched it every year. It's a good time. I love the way they're doing it now. The old complaint was it took too long, right? So now it's too quick.
I guess so, yeah.
Yeah,
it's just like you at least okay, you'd hit a home run and reset, and not that everybody needs to go up there and kick the dirt off their cleats and stuff, but it's just boom, 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 and I guess people would like to be able to digest it a little bit better. That's, I guess, one side of the complaint.
If Julio Rodriguez hits 41 home runs in one round, does that just dissolve into the second? Should there not be at least a carryover?
Well, that's what they were doing, and now they have the bracketed championship. So he's got to beat if he hits 41 and he gets to the next round, then he's got to beat the guy in the next round. I like it because
that way it would
because
be in
it is
tournament.
One of the things that Vlad Guerrero and Randy Arozarena had to do, and it came right down to it with Arozarena last night, was the endurance of going fast. So it's a little bit of a different thing, and I think. I like that it showcases some people you might not have heard of, or they're starting to break out, like Luis Robert. He did strain his calf last night, but I think he'll be fine. But he had a really great, fantastic first round, just knocking the cover off the ball. And you get to see guys. Randy Arozarena was having a blast. Like, he's a guy, even though I'm not a fan of the Rays in any way, shape, or form, they're a really fun team if you're not in their division. But I love watching a Randy Arozarena play because he's having a blast playing the game. He ended up walking around with cowboy boots on and having fun, and all that. He and Adolis Garcia are very close friends, and they had to go against each other in the first round. And much to my dismay, as in my pool with my friends, I picked Adolis Garcia. So really regretted not picking Arozarena. Yep. But there are, I just think it was good. I like that it's faster. And, I think maybe they could slow it down a little bit. Give them 30 more seconds in the main amount of time, give him a second timeout so you can kind of catch it, because you're looking, it just goes and goes.
You get a timeout when a fan or a young man out in the outfield gets hit in the face, right? I hated that for you. That has to be a thrilling opportunity. But man, those balls are coming at you fast off the bat.
Yeah, so Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wins the home run derby. He took care of Mookie Betts in round number 1, ended up with 26 home runs, then went and defeated Julio Rodriguez in the semifinals 21-20, and then defeated Arozarena in the finals 25-23. Arozarena had beaten Adolis Garcia from the Rangers in the first round, and then beat Robert Jr. from the White Sox. Had 24 in the first, 35 in the semis, 23 in the finals. So a lot of home runs being hit last night. But, yes, in the end, it was Vlad Jr. over Randy Arozarena for the home run derby crown. Then, as I mentioned, later on tonight, the rest of the festivities, the All-Star Game, 7 p.m. first pitch. AL looking for their 10th in a row. Meanwhile, as a backdrop, the MLB draft has been going on the last, 3 days or so. And that was not something that I touched on because I wasn't here yesterday, but you did have a pair of LSU Tigers at the top of the draft when it originally kicked off. Paul Skeens, the all-everything right-handed pitcher, goes number 1 overall to the Pittsburgh Pirates, and then star outfielder Dylan Cruz goes number 2 overall to the Washington Nationals. Did have the Rangers picking there at 4, ended up with Wyatt Langford of Florida, which they seem to be pretty happy about, and I've seen a scattering of other players from all over the map that have been drafted here over the past couple of days. Hard to keep track of who's actually going to still go to college or maybe coming back and all of that, but pretty good sports year for LSU. You go win the national championship in baseball, and then you also have 2 of the top picks in the baseball draft. And we'll see how this carries over into football season for them. I think that's what everybody's wondering is how are they going to bring it back around to football, which got the party started with a big year under Brian Kelly. So a lot of momentum with the rest of that sports year carrying over into perhaps a really big year for football. There are certainly large expectations. Meanwhile, UFC. There's been a couple of big fights announced here in the last few days or so. One of them from the UFC, one from the world of exhibition, freak show, non-UFC fights. But just a few days ago, it was announced by Dana White that Stipe Miocic would be challenging John Jones for the promotion's heavyweight championship. Miocic has not fought in over 2 years, and he will meet Jones in a long-awaited dream matchup. Jones, the heavyweight champ, 27-1, 21-1 in his career in the UFC. Miocic, 14-4 in his career in the UFC. It'll be the main event of UFC 295, November the 11th, Madison Square Garden in New York. They'll be celebrating the company's 30th anniversary, and this will be the fight that gets the top billing. So that'll be one that a lot of people look forward to, Miocic and Jones, and not to be outdone. There were some rumors about this, and then Dana White pops up and makes what seemed like a very impromptu video to announce Ngannou and Jones, which is a huge fight, one that people have been waiting on seeing for quite a while now at this point. But part of the reason people felt like the timing was what it was because of the rumors about former UFC heavyweight champion Francis Ngannou, who is now going to be fighting boxing heavyweight champ Tyson Fury in Saudi Arabia on October the 28th. And per the release, this will take place under the official rules of professional boxing. So the heavyweight champion in boxing against the former MMA fighter in a boxing match. I wonder how this will go when all is said and done. This is becoming a really tired storyline with these super fights.
Is this going to be a fight or an exhibition?
It's going to be a boxing match.
Yeah,
it's going to be a boxing match under official rules, 3 judges, ringside, 10-point system. Both fighters are promising to meet in the middle of the ring, go to war, win by knockout in devastating fashion, it says in the release. So, no, to answer your question, this isn't going to be Floyd Mayweather, exhibition style. This is going to be a regulation boxing match in a regulation ring from all indications, standard rules, but it's still a heavyweight boxer who's a champion, mind you.
And a big man.
And a big guy versus another big guy who's a former heavyweight champion in MMA, but he can't take down Tyson Fury. He can't kick Tyson Fury.
So, yeah, just to clarify for the people in Saudi Arabia, kicking is not legal in boxing.
Right.
No. Yes. I think Tyson Fury will take him out whenever he wants. He's a big man. I know the other guy's big too. I've seen him. But I think that the difference between boxing and MMA, this isn't like when Ali fought Inoki a Japanese wrestler, and he just kicked him around the ring all the time. I think Fury will take him out whenever he decides to.
Well, Antonio Inoki was actually brilliant because he just crouched down and kicked Ali's legs over and over again, and he actually hurt Ali's legs, after a while, because how could you not if somebody just keeps kicking you in the legs? But that was his only way to try and fight. He couldn't stand up and box with Ali. Like, what was that? He's going to get knocked out in 2 seconds. So he fought like it was an actual fight the best way that he could, and it made for a boring-ass fight between Ali and Inoki, but it did make some history. This will be much more action-packed. They're going to stand in there and swing, apparently. I don't know. I got one eyebrow kind of half-cocked because I just don't trust anybody involved with a lot of these fights, and I know it'll make a lot of money, but hopefully there is plenty of action. There's been very hit or miss as far as those goes, but yeah, I would expect Fury, the heavyweight boxing champion, to win the boxing match over the MMA fighter, no matter how big and strong and tough that MMA fighter might be. And I want to see a boxer get in a dadgum MMA octagon at some point. Could we please? Can we get one of those guys to actually cross over on a major level, like a high-level named guy? Like, let's see Canelo in the MMA octagon.
You know what I want to see? I want to see enough boxers where you don't have to have these made-up...
Well, that'd be good, too.
These fights that are going to bring in tons and tons of money.
That'd be good, too. But we've seen a lot of the MMA guys go dabble in boxing, and it's not typically worked out all that well for them, especially near the top. And then I'll leave it with this. Adam Silver. There's a lot of talk about Live Golf and their investments in American sports and sports washing and all of that discussion and debate that's been ongoing, especially around the world of golf. And then you have, just various stakes. Like last month, Qatar, a sovereign wealth fund, purchased a stake in the group that controls the Washington Wizards, the Washington Mystics, and the Washington Capitals. And there are some, safeguards in place so that if you're a sovereign wealth fund, you can't just come in and buy any North American sports franchise. But it has led to a lot of discussion about, what could happen in the NBA if, some Saudi Arabian prince wants to come in and buy a league member, or in the NFL, I think is where really a lot of people's wonder goes as far as who could come in. Well, Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, said yesterday that there is no pathway in at least the foreseeable future for one of those sovereign wealth funds to become controlling owners of an NBA franchise. He doesn't say that it would never happen, but there's no contemplation right now, he said during a Q&A at an AP Sports Editors Convention. He said that putting aside sovereign wealth funds, that individuals are in a position to control their teams is important, that it means that there's a responsibility to the fans of said franchises. There's a responsibility of their partners and their players, whereas if it was just some big, nameless, faceless sort of sovereign wealth fund, there's not that much, I guess, control to be had potentially.
So Liv is not going to own the Washington Wizards.
Liv's not going to, because Liv's not a sovereign wealth fund, but the people who own Liv are not going to be owning the Washington Wizards. Said it's very important that there be a person in charge, and that means being independent of sovereign wealth funds. Now, he did say it's not never, ever, ever will it happen, but there are at least some safeguards in place, as current rules state the controlling owner has to own at least 15% of a franchise, and any wealth fund can only own no greater than 5%. So that's the safeguard that's in place to prevent that from happening. So just thought it was interesting that he touched on that subject, and especially at a time when it seems like the valuations for teams are going up and up and up. And as he pointed out, there does come a point where they get so high that there's not many people outside of a sovereign wealth fund that can afford some of these franchises eventually. There's only so many Microsoft founders who are interested in owning sports teams, your Paul Allens or your Bill Gateses or your whoever's, that are going to be able to, Steve Ballmer, that are going to be able to buy the Clippers. But the higher and higher and higher these franchise price tags keep going, pretty soon it's going to be Qatari and Saudi princes and their sovereign wealth funds that are only going to be able to pay the $3.7 billion for the Anaheim Ducks or whatever it eventually comes to. So that is something to keep note of as these prices do keep skyrocketing. But as of right now, no plans for a sovereign wealth fund to own an NBA team.
Commanders went for $7 billion, and they're a horribly run franchise, but they're in D.C. They're part of the NFC East. They're a part of the NFL. No matter how poorly they've been run for 20 years, $6 to $7 billion.
Well, and look, Adam Silver can't just go off and sell the NBA to the Saudis since they're already owned by China.
Very true.
There
Yes,
you
the
go.
NBA is already owned. That's right. No.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, that's just an interesting topic, though. It was cool to hear him speak on that. And, we'll see, because these franchises aren't going to just stop going for what they're going for. It is going to keep ticking up, and that'll be a thing for them to have to deal with in the future. But for right now, money has come in the NBA, NFL, and various other sports' ways. So I think he's happy about that for the time being, and those are a few things off the radar.
All right, Craig, thank you very much. Alliance Bank, the sponsor of Off the Radar, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 4:45. John Dry earlier today was asking in the chat about Big 12 Media Day coverage. We will be live tomorrow, first thing in the morning, Wednesday and Thursday on the grounds, on the field at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, with different coverage of ADs, coaches, presidents perhaps, and also players and media who will join us for a couple of consecutive days. This is 365 Sports. Marco's Pizza. In fact, here in just a minute, there will be a thin crust Italian sausage pizza arriving here at the studio. There's a lot of work being done right now behind the scenes. Jack's had all the equipment out there trying to get packed up for us to leave after the show or whenever to be at Big 12 Media Day. So I said, what the hell? Let's go ahead and have some food brought here, just enough to tie people over if they're driving to Dallas tonight or whatever, if they have not eaten, and including some wings that I put in the order as well with barbecue sauce on the side. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers get it. 5 locations in the Waco area. Hewitt, Robinson, Woodway, China Spring, and Belmead. Bob Mock is the owner, has been in the restaurant or pizza business for many, many years, and now owns 5 of those franchises right here in Waco. In fact, Marco's Pizza, Garrett, has just walked in the door with our order in one of our favorite delivery man ever, with the nice warm bag to keep it that way. Marco's Pizza, Bob Mock and Company. This, by the way, delivery came from the Belmead location, from the 75704. Marco's Pizza. Pizza lovers, get it, marcos.com. Alan Samuels, Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. How crazy is this? 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport totals values of $4,000 plus 1.9% financing for 72 months. How crazy is that? Or the 2023 Jeep Compass, get 10% below MSRP. That's right, these deals are hot, just like our summer days in Texas. Remember, first responders get another $500 in savings. So come find the Jeep that's right for you and save big at Alan Samuels in Waco. Make this the summer sales event at Alan Samuels during the hot days of summer. And this month in July, get legendary 2023 Dodge Chargers or Challengers, SXT, GT, or RT models. Your choice with total values up to $2,000. Alan Samuels in Waco is the place for you to shop for your next Dodge. Shop the greatest selection in Central Texas and find the hot rod for you. Come by and visit the showroom at Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat. See the Demons and Scat Packs they have loaded the sales floor with. They won't last long, as you truly have the last call models of legendary muscle cars only at Alan Samuels Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram Fiat in Waco, Loop 340 east of 84.
Pizza, burgers, and Bears football. There's no place around Waco that serves them all other than Bubba's 33. Come show your green and gold and enjoy some of Waco's best food and beverages while watching your favorite team, the Bears. When real Bears fans get hungry, Bubba's 33 is the #1 spot for ice-cold drinks, hand-stretched, stone-baked pizzas, and bacon-infused burgers. Join us for indoor or patio dining. Bubba's 33, Waco's restaurant and proud supporter of Baylor Bears football. Sick 'em, Bears!
Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletics, diagnosing and treating all sports-related injuries, including concussions. These specialists also provide orthopedic services for athletes and non-athletes alike, whether it's knee or shoulder pain, a wrist injury, orthopedic spine care, and even an arthritis and total joint clinic. Trust the doctors Baylor Athletics trust. Baylor Scott & White Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics wants to get you back in the game.
Waco Custom Marketplace is your hometown grocery store with a full-service butcher shop and bakery. Hi, this is David Smoak. The butcher shop can take your customized orders for seafood, pork, and poultry, and custom cut your favorite steaks from bacon-wrapped fillets to T-bone to bone-in ribeyes, cut specifically the way you want. They have Norwegian chicken salmon fillets, catfish fillets, sliced ham or turkey and lunch meat, variety of cheese available, and several options of sausage links, fresh chicken breast or whole chickens, sliced bacon, pork chops, ground beef, marinated beef, and chicken fajitas, and always large briskets available, plus fresh vegetables. So the great product, customer service, and family tradition of the Bauer family continues at Waco Custom Marketplace, open Monday through Saturday. A full-service butcher shop and bakery available. Waco Custom Marketplace, 425 Lake Air Drive in Waco, or WacoCustomMarketplace.com.
When we moved to Texas, we were like fish out of water. We didn't know anyone in our neighborhood until our Texas Farm Bureau insurance agent came to the house. She was so helpful and reassuring, a friendly face with that Texan hospitality I'd heard about. When we purchased a Texas Farm Bureau insurance policy, we knew we were making the right choice. We knew our family would be protected.
Stop by and see our agents at one of our 3 McLennan County locations.
Coverage and discounts are subject to qualifications and policy terms and may vary by situation.
How did Edward Jones become one of the biggest financial service companies in the world? By not acting that way. Financial strategies, one-on-one advice, it's a big difference. And that's why Brad Wilson, your Edward Jones financial advisor, makes sense of investing. Experience the difference for yourself. Brad Wilson, 250 Sharon Drive in Woodway, 254-776-4337. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
This is 365 Sports, powered by Sikkim365.com.
The 5 o'clock hour is sponsored by Edward Jones Investments with financial advisor Brad Wilson. Investing is time and experience back to you and your money during today's changing times. Edward Jones, making sense of investing.
Now here's David Smoak, Paul Catalina, and Craig Smoak.
So it was a couple of weeks ago, we were at HAB for a couple of years, even longer than that, discussed TV values, conferences, whatever, and the Pac-12 is trying to figure theirs out, and at some point you would think release that you would think this month, but who knows?
No, did you see the talk today?
No.
Oh, yeah, no, what's not Wilner, the other guy, he put out a story that don't expect anything by media days here in a couple of weeks for the Pac-12, and it's all part of the plan. And
was that the one that also said the quote was the room has shifted?
That was basically what he's reiterating, except for this time I guess it's for real. And that the room has shifted, and that was out there I guess earlier today, late last night. It shifted
because some of the Four Corner schools now have a seat at the table.
Right, yeah. So that's the latest development, and that's, I guess, what to now expect is not for something to necessarily happen at media days, and at some point beyond that, I don't even care to even try to guess anymore at this stage.
George Kliavkoff get COVID? Is that what he's going to like?
I don't know.
I mean, not show up at Big 12 media days?
Well, by the way, there's also a great article and also an update from AP in the forums, this premium section, on meandering the realignment countryside, which is worth by itself the cost to be a member at Sikkim365.com premium section.
Yeah, to paraphrase, no hurry as Las Vegas looms for the Pac-12, and yeah, they're just not worried about it.
All right, so a couple of weeks ago while doing all that, Craig brought up what would the original Big 12's value be had everybody been nice, had everybody not eaten its own. And that includes first Nebraska and then Colorado and then Missouri and A&M and now Texas and Oklahoma. And the man with all of the analytics and data, Sam Bradshaw, took on the homework assignment and has spit out some pretty interesting stuff. Sam, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience getting to you here in this segment. But so when I asked you that question and passed it on with what Craig asked, is that something that kind of like immediately intrigued you to, I wonder what it might be?
Thanks for having me on. And honestly, it's one of those, there's a lot of unknowns. So we're really talking in ranges because anytime you're talking a deal, you're dealing with market conditions, you're dealing with who's buying, you're dealing with, is it an open market or is it an extension? What rights are they selling? At some point, if the Big 12 had stuck together in their original group, Would they have started a network? There's a lot of things that are unknown. So we're going to be mainly looking at just some broad assumptions. I went at this primarily looking at the current, or the future, I should say, Big 12. The 12 teams going forward have a contract for about $380 million. And let's just assume that the remaining 8, who make up 8 of the 12, so 2/3 of the membership, let's assume they make up somewhere between 2/3 and 3/4 of that total lump sum media value that's being divided, and the new additions combined for the rest. Well, we know that a lot of industry analyst sources estimated the total amount that Texas and Oklahoma contributed to the prior 10-team arrangement was supposed to be half the value. Half the lump sum that everybody's splitting. So take the 2/3 or 3/4 of the $380 million, whatever that is, you double that, and you've got an estimate of what it would be with Texas and Oklahoma. And then from there, I believe Chet Brown reported when Nebraska and Colorado left that they should have represented about 16% of the value lost. So you factor out another 16% from there. And then you kind of have a conservative estimate relative to what would that value be before we really don't have an estimate on how much value did you lose when you swapped out West Virginia and TCU for A&M and Missouri. Because West Virginia is a really strong brand, and they're a lot like Arkansas in the regard that they're a smaller state, but they draw a lot of eyeballs outside their state, particularly in Pittsburgh and D.C. And then TCU certainly had a strong program of recent years, but at the same time, their alumni base is not the same as the Aggies. And in particular, their rivalry game with Texas has not really been able to hold that Thanksgiving spotlight stage the way that game did. So there's obviously some value lost, but you also replace some value. And when you do a lot of these calculations and you back it out, the range I got was in the high 40 millions for schools, to the low 60 million. We're almost right at 60 million a school as an absolute dream scenario maximum. So you're probably talking in the high 40 million to low 50 million range, if I had to guess. And, again, it depends on a lot of factors, but you're adding in a lot of top tier games as well. Nebraska facing off against Texas and Oklahoma. Nebraska, Colorado, which did $3 million the last couple times they played it in non-conference. Oklahoma, Nebraska, that just did $4 million and $3 million in non-conference in recent years. You've got a lot of big-time games that would push that dollar number up.
Sam, how much of this also can you even factor in the fact that Nebraska and Colorado in particular, look, A&M's the same, Missouri's taking a little bit of a dip, obviously, but with those 3 teams that have been worse in the conferences they've gone to, how much does that increase the value of those particular games? Had they just stayed on being regularly consistent, Nebraska winning 9 games, Colorado occasionally contending for the North Conference title, Missouri being a regular participant in the conference title game?
Well, I didn't factor that in just from the simple standpoint. I wanted to keep it simple, defensible, easy to understand. But certainly the more success a program has, the better your valuation would be. That said, a lot of the problems that have happened in those programs are not necessarily tied to the conference they're in. Some of it might be, but if you're not handling your house very well, you're not necessarily going to handle your house any better just because you go down in terms of what league you're competing in. Some of those teams might do better had they stayed. Some of those teams might be in the exact same boat. If you make a bad coaching hire, it doesn't really matter whether a certain conference's logo is on your chest. If that coaching hire is a bad hire, your program's probably not going to be going to new heights.
Sam, how do you think a Big 12 network might have worked with the benefit of hindsight and looking at the numbers, the desire for brands these days, things of that nature. Obviously, they went a different direction, went Longhorn Network and all of that, but do you see like the potential that could have been there had things gone differently?
That was probably the tipping point for the Big 12's realignment future. Long before Longhorn Network was even an idea that Texas was taking seriously. Kevin Weiberg, the guy that started the Big Ten Network for the Big Ten, he left the Big 12 to go do that. When the Big 12 turned it down, he was their commissioner, and it was overwhelmingly voted down. Had they done that, they may have not been rated. They may have stayed together, and they may have expanded. But they didn't do that, and then they turned around and signed a Fox deal for Tier 2 rights that basically a year after they signed it, or a year after it started, they're getting paid like an average of, I think at the time it was $19.5 million for the entire conference, only to have the Tier 2 and Tier 3 TV market get reset by the Big Ten Network that was throwing off $6.5 million a school like a year into that contract starting for the Big 12. Because their top 19 or so games, their top games, that contract with ABC at the time was extremely competitive with the SEC deal that would be signed with CBS the following year. It was competitive with what the Pac-10 at the time had. But the failure to accurately and efficiently monetize that back half of their inventory is what put the Big 12 in a bind. If they had handled that part of it better, we may be talking about an intact Big 12 that potentially went after some Big East schools, or potentially they may have gone after the Pac-12 way back when, because the Pac-12 was in a similar contract situation as well.
All right, so of the 6 teams, or now 8, right? There's been TCU, West Virginia, and now the incoming 4 that have joined the conference. Brigham Young seems to probably have the biggest clout. Is that correct as far as value, TV value, or is it somebody else?
Of the new 4, it's got to be BYU. They have the biggest historical brand. They're one of the most winning programs since the 80s. And you're talking that 18 to 45-year-old demographic, they're right at the top edge of that with when they started being prevalent on the national stage. They've got a national title, whether or not you want to dive too deeply into the strength of schedule that year. They still have a national title. They've got a Heisman winner. It's a storied program. They deliver eyeballs consistently. They've got a big enrollment, and even beyond that, they've got a bit of a strong religious following just among Mormons in general, because they're so tied in with that church. You know, they are likely the strongest brand that's been added in the recent bout. The only addition to the Big 12 that, if you valued them when they're going 3-9, if you valued them when they're going 6-6, when you value them when they're going 9-3, and you just look, given equal results, the only addition the Big 12 has made since they added anybody would potentially be West Virginia. They're the only one that I would really say might have the clout to even debate it. And even then, BYU's tough to knock off that pedestal.
Sam Bradshaw, 365 Sports, Sick on 365 Radio, who does a lot of the prep work when it comes to Baylor and opponents they're going to play each week in football, but has been a rock star when it comes to data, analytics, and much more, looking at the open windows, what's available, and also the value among television deals within the Big 12 and other conferences too.
But, Sam, if you don't expect Texas and Nebraska and Oklahoma and Missouri to look back and kick themselves for making this financial decision, do you?
No, from a financial standpoint, they're making more than they would have at the time that they left the conference. You know, you'd have to go further back than any of them left in order to find any kind of alternate history with better decisions made that could have been competitive with that. You know, these decisions are being made for money, and the Big 12 didn't set themselves up in a way to potentially compete on that playing field the way they needed to hold the teams. But they're doing well with what they have now, and they're going to chart the best path forward. To the extent that any of the schools look back to the Big 12 with a tear in their eye, they'll be dabbing that tear with a massive pile of money. So it's not exactly the type of longing that's going to make anybody lose any sleep.
So you mentioned Brigham Young, and we know their history and also the value there and the eyeballs. But of the other three, Cincinnati, and obviously a very populated state in Ohio, UCF, which is in what is a great fertile place when it comes to recruiting in Florida, plus Orlando, et cetera. But then Houston, even though there's some that, they don't have any eyeballs in Houston, they've proven at times they do based on who they are. But is there value in Houston, maybe more in them in the future than the other three?
If I had to place more future value on any one of the three, I would probably say UCF, just because there are people who, there are still people who were born around the time that they got into a remotely regional conference with any kind of TV exposure at the FBS level. That's how young they are. Like, they only started playing FBS in like 96, something like that. And when you think about what that does with their donor base, and when you think about just how big they are, and I understand all three of these schools have these so-called commuter label, but even when you subdivide their enrollment by how many people have lived on campus at some point and how many actually graduate and just how many were full-time students, the kind of demographics that would mimic what you would get at a typical residential four-year university that wouldn't have the commuter label applied to them, they're still a huge school. And they're all young relative to a lot of these other schools. So you've got to think their donor base, their fan base, and then the fact that there's no pro sports competition in Orlando, long term, they're going to grow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why there was a lot of justification for creating another geographical outlier through that expansion, because that value was observed. As far as Houston, they certainly have the potential to grow, and they've certainly got a fair amount of history. They have the old SWC brand. You've got Bill Yeoman. You've also got the Run and Shoot. You've also got Phi Slamma Jamma. You've got a lot of history there. But as far as growth, I'd probably have to lean towards UCF. And then in terms of just recent success, UCF and Cincinnati have been very consistent over the last decade. Well, UCF had a couple down years, but for the most part, their peaks have been much like Baylor. They've had 2-3 seasons that have been really good.
So let's get to the details one more time. Had the Big 12 remained intact based on today's value, based on the information you've looked at, their TV contract, the media deal, would be somewhere in the neighborhood of the mid to upper 40s to the lower, possibly at the ceiling of the $60 million per school?
Depending on how you go about it and what kind of projection you're looking at, you could rationalize anything from the low 40 million range to a peak of about 60 million. Personally, I think you're probably looking somewhere in the 48 to 53 range. But again, as mentioned before, it depends on the situations contractually. Like, are they locked into a long-term deal? Is this a pure open market sale? Is it a negotiation for that, or is it just immediate extension where there's not as much immediate competition? There's a lot of things that could push that number up or down, but I feel like the number would be in that range because you're adding 3 or 4 really strong brands and a couple support brands as well.
Yep.
And from there, you're also adding back St. Louis and Denver into the mix, and you've got a lot to potentially put some of those big matchups on. You've got the Thanksgiving game with Texas and A&M. You've got Colorado, Nebraska. You've got Oklahoma, Nebraska, and then you've got A&M versus Colorado or Nebraska. It gives you a lot of big matchups that, even if the teams aren't necessarily knocking out of the park in that given year, people who've watched college football a long time recognize those helmets, they recognize those brands, and they tune in.
Sam, thank you for doing that. I know that it was an extra homework assignment, but you're great at it. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, and we hope to have you on again soon.
Thanks, Smokey.
Thank you, Sam Bradshaw. S11_, I think it's Baylor, right? With us, and all of his details, stats, figures.
So do you think when you said homework assignment and you gave that to Sam, like if you look back to Sam as like a junior in high school, a very studious junior, and the teacher said, you've got this report, and it was in his wheelhouse, he was like, oh, I can't wait to go through that.
No, that's why I asked him. I would not have asked anybody else. And Craig brought it up. I remember Paxton and a couple of others reacted to that. Man, we'd love to know that information. And so now we at least got kind of a rough draft on that based on what he could do with Sam Bradshaw, who is fantastic. And always remember that Bob Thompson, the former Fox Sports executive, the last time Sam did analytics and data and all the graphics, Bob Thompson gushed all over it, which is a hell of a compliment for one of our own. All right, when we come back, Bill Connolly, ESPN, he and Dave Wilson wrote 5 storylines they look forward to entering Big 12 Media Days. Dave will be there tomorrow in Arlington, we hope. And then, of course, Paul's Top 5. And this is 365 Sports. The staff of Ashley, Cheyenne, and Carol, knowledgeable about the products they have. Always more than happy to help you learn more about the cigar business or CBD product or even coffee beans. Don Humidor has any kind of gift that you need for something, a special occasion coming up. Holidays, of course, that's a special deal. They'll have various discounts when that time comes around. But Don Humidor, several new coffees for warmer temperatures or cooler temperatures. And the warmer temperatures, for example, they can have a flavor or two that kind of helps you cool down, even though coffee, of course, can be served hot. It normally does. They have the Padron 1964 Anniversary Series. Torpedo Natural was the #1 cigar in 2021. Rocky Patel, Artur Fuente, Macanudo, Ashton, you name it, they have it. Don Humidor and coffee beans and CBD products, Vita Dreams. If you have troubles at night falling asleep, you toss and turn, they can help you with that. It's Don Humidor and coffee beans in the Town West Shopping Center right off of Richland Drive in Valley Mills in Waco.
In our logo and advertising, we say we are people that you can count on. What does that mean? It starts with providing a quality vehicle and quality service at a fair price. But it also means we do what we say we will do, and we treat people fairly with respect. It starts by hiring great people, good local folks who work hard with a caring attitude. Our employees are the real reason we are people that you can count on. Put us to the test and see for yourself that at Richard Carr Motors, we are people you can count on.
One size fits all. That may be all right for an adjustable belt or cheap sunglasses, but when it comes to your financial needs, no one wants a one-size-fits-all strategy. Cam Heathcott, your Edward Jones financial advisor, knows that his most important goals are yours. That's why we take the time to understand your needs, knowing you. That's how Edward Jones makes sense of investing. Cam Heathcott in Conroe at 936-756-7717. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
You want to know why Stonewood Dental is so successful? Listen to what happy customers have to say.
It's pleasant. It's different than any other dentist office. I really feel like they care. And it's not that you're here for 2 hours waiting on someone to take care of you. It's quick and easy, and I bring my kids, and my kids love being here too. They really love the treasure box. Staff is really nice and accommodating, real friendly. You feel more like home. It's not sterile looking. Everybody has their own personalized rooms with decorations and decor, and they'll even have a blanket for you when it's cold. I've recommended people to actually come here, and they are patients now. I really love it here. It feels like family.
Learn more, stonewood-dental.com.
Established in 2007 and independently owned, Alliance Bank Central Texas is committed to helping families and businesses meet their financial goals. From their tellers to their board of directors, they know the importance of superior service and competitive products. Customers have confidence knowing that their financial needs are in good hands. It's your bank, Alliance Bank Central Texas, with 2 Waco locations, 4721 Bosque Boulevard and 191 Archway Drive on Highway 84, and at alliancebanktexas.com. Member FDIC and equal housing lender.
At Ideal MRI, we feel blessed to be a part of the Waco community. We're a small family business right here in Central Texas, and our goal is to bring down the cost of healthcare while maintaining high quality. At times like this, the cost of healthcare has never been more important, and unfortunately, significant illnesses and injuries still occur. That's why Ideal MRI is open and here to serve you through the difficult time. We offer premium MRIs just like a hospital with state-of-the-art technology and specialists, but you'll pay less. Sometimes thousands of dollars less, whether you're using insurance or not. At Ideal MRI, we accept most insurance and there are no hidden costs. Even offering financing if that's needed, everything included in the price, and you'll not get something as a surprise in the mail later on. If you need an MRI, ask your doctor about Ideal MRI. They'll know. You can schedule an appointment safely from home online in minutes at idealmri.com or give us a call, 833-IDEAL-MRI, idealmri.com.
This is 365 Sports. Want more updates during the day? Follow 365 Sports YT on Twitter.
ESPN.com today, Bill Connolly and also Dave Wilson. 5 questions ahead of Big 12 Media Days. Paul, you had that as a part of your top 5 to end the show on Monday. And Bill joins us now on 365 Sports with Craig and Paul, and I'm David Smoak. So how much of everything initially was just dominated by waiting for what Brett Yormark might say, no matter what it is?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. We know he enjoys having a little attention on him and being able to say big, bold things. And the Big 12 is certainly acting pretty boldly at the moment, so it should be pretty entertaining. We never quite learn all that much at these things. It's more about just learning what the Big 12 wants us to be thinking about. But it will be kind of interesting in that regard, if nothing else.
Bill, do you expect him to have a little bit of a bombshell, or do you expect it to be what he's normally done, where he's very good at teasing something right up to the edge of actually having an answer?
Right. I mean, if he's the one guy who would actually try to come up with a bombshell and announce Colorado and UConn and whatever else, but probably not. I do. It's just going to be we're looking to be aggressive and kind of the catchphrases that we heard last year and that we've heard a lot since. I mean, again, I think we're kind of stuck in terms of who they can add and whatnot until we know about the Pac-12 deal, which apparently we'll learn something about in the next 12 years or so. But that's. I mean, we won't know anything about Colorado. I guess, if UConn's ready to jump, but I don't think they are. So I think it's just going to be a lot of talk about being aggressive and creative and so on and so forth.
Interesting times, Bill. 4 brand new schools. They were kind of around representatives last year to sort of check things out. But, I mean, now in full. But, of course, the 2 that will be departing, and that was one of your notes here was what's kind of the treatment of Texas and Oklahoma. What do you expect, and just how much do you expect that to take up the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be disappointed if Mike Gundy doesn't have a couple more one-liners to get us through. But I do think, now that we're close to the end here, and now that they have to feel pretty good about the moves they've made. I mean, they added 4 good programs. 3 of them, it's gonna take them a little while, I think, to get up to speed. 3 of them kind of took a backward step last year, and we'll see exactly how they can account for that. But overall, they've added 4 really good programs, and I think they'll try to spin everything toward look at this is going to be such a fun conference in the future. And TCU just won the Big 12 college football playoff game, and they're staying. They're not OU or Texas. So there's plenty of spin forward that they can do. I think we're going to see a lot of that.
4 teams coming in, 2 that will have their last Big 12 Media Days. Which will be more dominant, the theme of the incoming 4, which I think, in my opinion, it will be, or the fact Texas and OU are leaving?
Yeah, I think it will be. It is kind of awkward, too, though, because Texas is the favorite this year. And so I do think it'll be kind of, we'll merge some storylines together here. Yes, Texas is leaving, but also can they actually live up to hype on the way out the door? So that's kind of created a secondary storyline for us over the summer months. But no, I think it will definitely be, they all got jabbed at OU and Texas last year, Gundy and whoever else probably will again this year. But for the most part, I think they'll be trying to spin this forward because it does look like a pretty fun future, and they might as well, try to sell that.
Bill, you guys mentioned you particularly mentioned the close games in how this Big 12 flipped from 2021 to 2022 in the top 5. Do you expect to see that trend continue this year in the Big 12?
I think so. I mean, obviously, if Texas, there's a lot to like about Texas, and maybe they're a step ahead of everybody else. They're going to have to be because they're not good in close games and haven't been for a little while. But the way this conference has gone the last couple of years, it's whoever goes 6-1 in those one-score games, or 4-1 or whatever. And TCU and Kansas State both did really, really well in that regard. K-State was the only team to beat TCU in one of those games last year. And it's just it's so hard to do that twice. We saw that with Baylor and Oklahoma State last year. Just all the little breaks that you got late, or some of you created for yourself, and then others, the bounces went correctly. It's really hard for those bounces to go right 2 straight years and you fall back. So I'm curious about TCU in that regard. Curious about K-State. They weren't quite as close game dependent. But I'm also curious about Texas Tech, like I mentioned in the piece. They improved last year. They're projected to, or they're picked to improve even further. They were 4-1, I think, in one-score games last year. Converted a ton of fourth downs, and we saw from Baylor last year that can backfire on you a little bit sometimes too.
Bill, you pointed out as far as the newcomers. I know you kind of just touched on it a second ago as well, but UCF kind of seems to be the favorite there. But just what are your thoughts on Holgorsen and Houston and kind of that whole situation? I would think after winning 8 games, a guy wouldn't be on a hot seat, but it sure sounds like he's still on a hot seat of sorts.
Yeah, it's funny with Houston. I mean, once they get a taste of success like that, they really it's really hard to take a step backwards. I guess that's a lot of programs in the end. But yeah, with what we saw in 2021 with Houston taking a humongous step forward, still scoring a lot of points, but suddenly having one of the better defenses in the group of 5 as well. It really looked like all the arrows were pointing in the right direction. And then last year, even with decent experience on the defensive side of the ball, it completely fell apart. They had the old Holgorsen defense again. So that's really hard to figure out what to. They have. They brought in some good transfers. Overall, I think that'll be pretty good. But was 2021 just a flash in the pan kind of deal, or can they actually repeat it? They're gonna score points, especially. I have no doubt about that. But yeah, the defense is going to determine whether they're fighting for 10th place in the conference or something better.
Bill, one of the underrated parts of the Big 12, at least I've always felt this way, is that. Yes, they've had alpha names. Some have left, and now Texas and Oklahoma are about to. But the league is incredibly competitive. And now with Kansas rising out of the ashes, who knows? What? Because they were always their 10th, their 10th, their 10th. But now you have 14 teams. Is the competitiveness of the actual conference week in and week out something you think is nationally underrated?
I mean, I love it. I try not to make it nationally underrated, but it quite possibly is. My joke when I'm talking to a Big 12 coach is just like, this is the conference where every game is decided by 3 points, and it feels like that sometimes. And I tweeted out last week when the media poll came out with the media poll results. I tweeted out like how I would have voted if I was in there, and I had BYU 14th, and of course a lot of BYU fans got mad about that. But I think BYU is like a top 60 team. It's just. Everybody's a top 60 team, and that's really, really fun. Now, I mean, I realize, you and Texas leave, and your money's not going to be as good as it would have been if they had stayed. But there's a lot you can sell fun in this conference, and you can sell week in, week out, 3-point games and overtimes and all this other stuff. We saw plenty of that last year, and combine that with awesome basketball and awesome softball and lots of other sports. That's a fun conference right there, and they're gonna do just fine for themselves, even if you're not making, $100 million a school or whatever it is from these next media rights deals.
Now, look, this might be splitting hairs, but BYU 14th, not West Virginia or Cincinnati?
Yeah, I mean, you could kind of interchange, I guess, 11th through 14th, really, just like you can kind of interchange 2nd through about 8th. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, looking up and down that roster, I don't trust the new defensive pieces, and I think the offense gets worse, and that's a pretty bad combination. But long term, Houston's obviously always got potential. BYU is well supported. They've been a top 40 program more often than not. So, yeah, I mean, I think long term, all these additions are going to do great. It's just I don't trust BYU's roster very much this first year.
A team that I'm having trouble kind of unpacking. I mean, I think everybody's kind of wait-and-see mode, but Oklahoma State in particular, I don't feel like anybody, and Baylor too to an extent, I feel like people just don't know what to expect one way or the other. But what are your thoughts on Oklahoma State, just because they've been so consistent for so long, and obviously last year got really messy, but, I mean, Gundy's a hell of a coach. What do you kind of unpack with them?
Yeah, it is funny with Baylor and Oklahoma State. You know, they were the darlings 2 years ago, and then they disappointed last year, and we write them off entirely, like 2 years ago didn't happen. But no, I when I write my previews for ESPN.com, and my Big 12 previews went up a couple weeks ago now. I have a general impression, a general thought, and then sometimes when I'm writing the previews, it changes. And with OSU in particular, when coming into the preview, all I knew is they lost a ton of transfers and the quarterback situation was a mess and all this other stuff. But over the course of the preview, I kind of talked myself into them a little bit. If Alan Bowman is still the Alan Bowman we saw at Texas Tech, if he can stay upright for 12, 13 games, that'd be very helpful. But if they've got the quarterback play there, then they've got a lot of the skill core is still pretty good. The defense should improve a lot. Love Kendall Daniels. They still have some of the pieces I really like in the front six. So I do think if hiring Gannon University's defensive coordinator, if it doesn't require a learning curve for him, defense should improve a lot and they should score a decent amount of points. So I do think I don't know if they're top 2 contender in the conference, but I could definitely see them being about a top 4 contender.
I've seen a couple of images that the Big 12 have tweeted out about, like the entrance onto the field and much more. I think this is not going to be just some random media days. I think that they're setting this thing up to be not Barnum and Bailey, but I think this is going to be interesting. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Look forward to it, Bill. And thank you very much for your time and insight. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's Bill Connolly, ESPN.com. He and Dave Wilson wrote a combo piece on the 5 storylines and their responses to it on questions entering the Big 12 Media Days. As of now, from what we can tell, tomorrow, Dave Aranda, a Baylor player or two, Dana Holgerson, Kalani Sitake, Mac Rhodes, and that's just the beginning, as we will be there early, recording segments that we can play back for not just tomorrow, but also Thursday. So the live guest and recorded guest throughout the next couple of days on 365 Sports. Back with Paul's Top 5.
Unite Private Networks. If you guys have been watching the show the last couple weeks and noticed that we haven't had any buffering, well, that's because of the heroes, saints, superheroes at Unite Private Networks. We were having a whale of a time with our connectivity at this building. And look, Unite Private Networks, it's not for your house, it's for your business. And this is, make no mistake, a business. Every time we buffered, that's lost money for 365 Sports and Sikkim 365. We cannot have that. We needed to upgrade, we needed to do it, and we went with Unite Private Networks. What do? Business-grade internet, protected fiber service. That means, guess what? You're on your own dedicated and symmetrical network. So your upload, download, you're not sharing with anybody. What we were doing in this neighborhood on the business internet that we were on was sharing with everybody else who was on that network. Well, no, this is our network. They can give you speeds up to 10 gigs per second and multiple tier 1 connectivity for added diversity. They have unbelievable equipment, access ring topology, and 100% fiber optic network. That means no last mile copper, which is what you get with most business fiber optic internet around the country. And look, they're not just available right here in River City and Waco, Texas. They're in 21 different markets or 21 different states. They're all over the place. You can find Unite Private Networks. Check out uniteprivatenetworks.com. 20 plus years of providing Gig E service to area businesses. They are fantastic. Believe me, we have had no problems in the week or so since we have switched over to Unite Private Networks. And if you're here in Waco, contact my buddy Ace Wigley, 254-803-7070, or just go online to uniteprivatenetworks.com.
The future's bright. The time is now.
College is what you make it. It's a late-night pizza run and all-nighters coding a new project. It's having big dreams and making them a reality. It's a professor who knows your name and your story. It's preparation for your future, your calling, your life. And at Baylor, it's even more. Baylor, where lights shine bright.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House, unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, that's TexasBeefHouse.com. Everyone, when they think of Wagyu, the first thing they think about is beef, and that's obviously what you guys specialize in, and you raise it right there from your pasture to the customer. The fillets, you have ribeyes, you have New York strips. I've tried them all. These are always available, correct, by ordering online?
Yes, everything's available, TexasBeefHouse.com. You can order one package of steaks up to as many packages as you want. All the steaks come 2 steaks per package. We've got New York strip fillets. The fillets are so tender you can almost cut them with a fork. Ribeyes. We've got top sirloin, and we've got regular sirloin, and even flat iron, flank steak, and flap steak. They're all great.
Oh, that sounds great. Fajita meat?
Yes, we've got skirt steak and flank steak that we use for fajita meat.
Samantha Duvall's the marketing director with Aaron Duvall, of course, in the Duvall family. What they've done, family-owned, operated, and they run. TexasBeefHouse.com. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu, not just steaks, but also so much more. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Let Camille Johnson Realtors guide you seamlessly through the process of buying your dream home or selling your current one. Commercial, farm and ranch, or residential, Camille Johnson Realtors can smoothly and successfully lead you through any transaction. With a team of 28 experienced agents who are excited about serving you, Camille Johnson Realtors services the entire greater Waco area. If you're in the market to buy or sell, contact Camille Johnson Realtors, 104 Midway Center in Woodway, or find them online at www.camillejohnson.com. Camille Johnson Realtors, elegant, charming, warm. Welcome home.
Stepping into a new pair of boots is great, but stepping into the boots of a U.S. Army officer can also add confidence and leadership skills to your son or daughter's career path. There are more than 150 occupational specialties to help them find the best fit for their future. See all the things your son or daughter can achieve in our boots at GoArmy.com. U.S. Army Waco Recruiting Company, 254-598-8131 or 254-776-1543.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
Did you know that 1 out of every 4 men have symptomatic low levels of testosterone and don't even know it? And if you think you're too young to worry about it, guess again. Low T levels can make you feel tired and grumpy, raise your cholesterol, and cause weight gain. Petty Clinic Low T can set up same-day blood screening and results. So if you're tired of being tired, call or go online at pettycliniclowt.com. It's a private clinic with an atmosphere catering to men. Affordable, only $165 a month, including lab work, office consultation, testosterone injections, and follow-up visits, compared to $300 or more a month in Dallas or Austin, and you don't have to drive 90 miles one way or the other and fight the traffic. Petty Clinic Low T has board-certified physician consultations and will provide the best form of brand-strength testosterone. Contact Petty Clinic Low T for increased energy, improvement in sexual desire and performance, mood, concentration, even a decrease in body and belly fat. Just off Highway 84 and Old Hewitt Drive in Woodway, PettyClinicLowT.com.
It's time for Paul Catalina's Top 5, brought to you by Texas Beef House. Where's the best beef in Texas? Your house when you order from Texas Beef House. Unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. From our pasture to your plate, TexasBeefHouse.com.
Top 5 things OU must do to win the conference. This continues our series. We started on Friday with Texas. Yesterday, we did Kansas State. Today, the team picked 3rd in the media poll, Oklahoma, and the top 5 things they must do to win in the Big 12. And I intentionally saved this one for today because, 1, they were 3rd, and 2, we couldn't do this one without Craig, in here commenting.
That was sweet.
And see, well, look, if I'm wrong on this, I'll completely take Craig because he knows the program way better than I do.
I thought it was your top 5, though. You've made that clear. We don't have opinions.
Yeah, no, but I mean, look, today I'm making an exception because, again, I'm opening up to maybe I don't know everything. Number 5, Dylan Gabriel loose again. Last year, the offense was humming when he was free to do his thing. I don't see that changing, but continue to grow that. Find ways to protect him maybe a little bit better, but also just let him loose, let him swing because, man, I was going through, picking out highlights for all the different schools for our opens and everything, and Dylan Gabriel, you can fall into a YouTube hole of 2 years or 3 years of him playing, and he's just fun to watch, and he changes the whole dynamic of the offense. I don't know if he does get hurt, if Jackson Arnold comes in, if he's that ready. But again, this is a guy who you can certainly win a conference title with Dylan Gabriel under center or in the shotgun, so to speak.
Yeah, I would love to have seen what he would look like with a full year under his belt, but, gets hurt in the Texas the whole Texas thing, it's almost like a memory you want to black out, the fact that he wasn't able to go, and you had to watch Davis Bevel just suffer for 2 hours. So this time, if that happens, Jackson Arnold, this time if that happens, Jackson Arnold will be a good insurance policy to have, and I feel better about that. But maybe that also allows you to just let it rip, and that's what they need to do. It's his last year. He's got a hell of a lot of talent. Seems to be a good leader. Seems to make things happen. So yeah, let her rip and. Let it come to you as the rest of it may, but hopefully he can stay healthy because I do think if he can, then he's got all the ability and intangibles and all those things and the coaching and the offense around him to have a monster year and, possibly go win the Big 12. I think that, he's as much a part of the reason why people expect a bounce back as really anything else. I mean, the defense should be better under Venables. Well, yeah, it should be. But that's not a given, and that's been a struggle for that program for a while now. Now, it should be a lot better, but I think one thing you can count on is Dylan Gabriel's going to be a good quarterback for you.
He can be a dual threat guy for you, too. Sneaky. I remember there was a run against Nebraska. I think he just kept going and going or somebody, and you want to see him be able to do that, and yet obviously, the damned if you do, damned if you don't, keep him healthy.
Now, part of that's on him, though. He's got a little bit of that, I can knock this guy over.
Right, he's not,
you don't need to do that.
No.
You've already gotten 17.
Be smart, step out of bounds, slide.
You've got the first down, live to fight another day. Number 4, establish chemistry early on. This is a huge roster flip over the last 2 years. If you want to win the Big 12 and don't get behind the 8 ball because, if you get 2 losses early on in conference, then you'll be probably fighting back the whole time. You establish the chemistry early on of this roster flip and keep building on that. If they have those things where they struggle to gel and this is a team that doesn't find its way until week 5, 6, 7, then that's probably a team that's not going to contend for the Big 12 title. But if they off the bat gel early on, this is a team with the talent that they have, at least on the upper level of their depth chart, that can contend pretty much all year.
Yeah, and I think that they've got a manageable schedule. I mean, SMU ought to be interesting just because they're going to have some firepower there with Rhett Lashley, and they can make things interesting, but that'll be a nice little measuring stick early on, and then you're going to have Cincinnati as your opener on the road. As far as the Big 12 goes, it seems like it'd be manageable, but it is some different scenery, and then Iowa State in Norman. So that's what leads you basically into the Texas game. Iowa State, Cincinnati, SMU, and then a couple of others sandwiched in between there. I think that we'll have a pretty good idea by the time they roll into Dallas of what kind of chemistry they have. And, hopefully for their sake it's been established this offseason because doing that in season and trying to figure that out is not going to generally go very well.
That's what I was going to mention. That right there is established with the workouts during the offseason. Not like during the week of a game or even in August. It's all what has been done since they finished the year disappointingly last year and got themselves back in the weight room, mat drills, strength and conditioning, and whatever else they did as a team.
Well, look, I think if you look back at the bowl game, they lost it, but that was a game where record-wise they were a little bit should have been overmatched, so to speak. But they availed themselves really well with a singular goal and 3 weeks to prepare. So if you're wondering if Brent Venables can get those things done when he doesn't have to worry about flipping the whole roster and all that, and that was even dealing with transfer portals and guys opting out, they were really ready for that game against Florida State in FSU's neck of the woods. So I think that you've seen that from Brent Venables. Now he's had a whole offseason to do it. I think that's certainly a real possibility. Number 3, show that upside. There may not be a roster in the Big 12 that has more, this could be amazing, than Oklahoma.
Amazing?
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. I mean, like, people talk about, the experts are saying, like, there's talent all here, but you haven't really seen a lot of it yet because, again, you're talking about a gigantic roster flip that Brent Venables has done. So if they show that upside and they hit that potential that the pundits think that they can, this is a team that will contend week in and week out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their overall upside is. I don't know if this is a team that's threatening to go to the playoffs just yet or anything like that, but, I mean, they can certainly compete in the Big 12, and, a lot of teams have flipped their rosters in this transfer era. They're not alone in that, but there has been, a bit of a more long-term project there just because they're still recovering from what the damage, Riley did before last season even began. So I would hope, but at this point, they've been able to shore a lot of that up, but there is a lot of unknown, although there is the feeling, like you said, that despite the unknowns, there's a lot of talent there to mold and to play with. So, I don't worry about them on the talent level. I'll look at that a little bit further, how that compares to the SEC teams they'll be playing a year from now. But, in general in the Big 12, they should be as talented as anybody, and they've got a lot of potential. So it's just all about meeting it, like you said.
Number 2, stay healthy because they do not.
It's a violent game, Paul.
Yes, it is a violent game, but keep people healthy so they can continue to grow in that upside. They do not. Bill Connolly, who we just had on a couple weeks ago, said that Oklahoma has upside but no depth, and that's kind of their issue right now because you don't know about their depth. So if they can show that upside and not have to, show the other side of it that might not be some of that depth, again, that's something they need to do is stay healthy all year long because this is not an Oklahoma team that can have, 3 or 4 key injuries and weather the storm like many in the past could have. If you could, Sam Bradford could have been out for a couple weeks and you weathered the storm. Those teams were really good. But Dylan Gabriel out for 3 weeks again, you're probably going to see a little bit of what you saw last year, even though Jackson Arnold might be better.
It would be nice if Oklahoma could take off early, get some established games, put them in the can, and get Jackson Arnold, if he's next up in line, a chance to play in some competitive games against live people, not just his own team in practice.
Yeah, that's a very fair point about their depth. I mean, it's one thing to have a solid starting 2022 or starting 22, but to have, the numbers behind that as well, that does matter, and we saw that at quarterback with him last year, as we pointed out multiple times now. You feel much better at QB, but about the rest of it, I don't know. There's some spots like running back should be okay, but there's a few others that if something were to go sideways or player gets hurt, then they might be in a little bit of trouble. So, I mean, I think you could say this for every team. Staying healthy is one of the biggest factors in those who have a pretty good run and those who don't. Certainly that affected their run last year. And if they can avoid that, that would go a long way because the starting talent is pretty good.
Okay. Okay. Well, go ahead and tell me one first.
I think number 1 is pretty obvious. Tackle somebody.
There you go.
Tackle somebody.
I mean, that's what Brent Venables is supposed to do,
yes.
right?
Yes. Tackle somebody, be better on defense, get in their way. That was, but, everybody expected Brent Venables to come in and, immediately, shoot adrenaline into the defense, but the defense wasn't great before, and they lost guys. So he's trying to rebuild a defense and rebuild a scheme that's very different than what Alex Grinch is doing. So we'll see Brent Venables, progress on defense pretty early on, I'm sure. But again, if they want to win the Big 12, they're going to have to tackle somebody.
Yeah, I mean, they sucked on defense last year, bottom line, and that's not what you expected with a defensive coach, but that does happen sometimes, especially when, he's also having to handle other duties as well. This is, I think, what everybody's most looking forward to seeing, or scared to see probably in some cases for some OU fans is just how well they're able to tackle, wrap up, just do basic defensive things at a relatively high level. You do that and you shore up a lot of the problems from last year because it was a lot of just sloppy tackling, weakness, and whatever else you want to attribute it to. But I would be gobsmacked if the defense isn't significantly better. I don't think they're going to be Clemson at its height just yet. But, I mean, just being able to do basic things well and be able to, have an idea of what you're actually doing out there as a unit. I think we'll see a big stride forward for them, and that should, like Gabriel's health, just having those things should be huge upgrades to build off of what we saw just a year ago that worked well.
All right, Paul, there you go. Oklahoma was on the clock at number 3 in the media poll. We'll get into a lot of that. We'll have other media analysts on with us again tomorrow, but players, coaches, ADs, and who maybe even a school president, and Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark. Jack McKenzie, Levi Caraway, Emery Winter, Graham Braunstein. Also, Garrett Ross. We'll see you guys tomorrow at the Big Boy in the Dallas and Fort Worth area in Arlington, AT&T Stadium. For Paul Catalina, for Craig Smoak, our sponsors, thank you so much. Every day we are here, and now 31,000 plus subscribers as we continue to grow here on 365 Sports. I'm David Smoak. Good night.